enough of that. All right, levels are up. File is open. Let's pick up where we left off. So basically we went through, let me raise this up. So this is my refined blockout from the blockout we did on Tuesday. If you want to check that out, right at the top, we'll go to, let's not do playlist. Let's do the Big Blue Genie. Let me see if I can move this up. Here's all the live streams. Y'all already know this. It's not on ArtStation quite yet. Not everything ends up on ArtStation, but this one might. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so we stopped. We did our base. Do I still have that in here? Let me see. Yeah, so we started with basically this, just a Dynamesh with the shoe from our eBay reference painted on there. And then we went through and did a bunch of panel techniques to, you know, put these little panel guys on there. And I'll walk through. I spent a couple, let's say a couple hours, and I wasn't able to devote a ton of time to it, but just a couple hours of just, okay, got all the panels created, did just a touch of refinement, and then added the laces, so we'll cover a little bit of that. So let's see here. Once you get the panels on there, we've already got, let's go ahead and save this real quick just in case. And we'll save this as a blockout refined. So we have a panel, and numerous ways to create that. One way I kind of covered but kind of didn't, is if you want to go through and say, okay, I want to make, again, we'll just do this simple one right here. And there are holes in this. So if we were following our reference, even if you can't quite see it, or you can, you know, you get the, let's turn on RGB for a standard brush here. Go up here and say, oh, okay, a lace is going this way. So we got 3 laces at about that location on there. So we'll go ahead and say BTO for a topology brush. Of course, multiple ways we went over last time. More than one way to skin a cat in this program. So we'll go through here and be, okay, here's our shape all across, and then here's our shape. Yay. And then if I want to add this with thickness, I can make my brush size however thick I want this thing, and then tap, and that'll give me the geometry. Or I could say brush draw size of 1. That's just tapping S on your keyboard. And I'm going to go to say split mask points, and that'll split this off. Let's go ahead and go back up to white color. We'll turn off our poly paint by holding down shift, blah, 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 blah. And then here's our polyframe. Now I can go through here and I can say ZBrush brush BZM, QMesh, polygroup, pull this out, or go down to the bottom 2, and you can pull down and hold down shift and pull along the surface normal. And then we can go down here. I like to do a quick, put a little polygroup down here, so Control W. Let's go ahead and make this so you can see it. So the polygroup down here, and then a polygroup over here. These are going to be rounded corners, so when I hit D for dynamic subdivisions, it'll go ahead and give me, it already creased my polygroups. It creased my original polygroup. It hasn't creased these polygroup borders yet, so I can go into crease PG, that is crease polygroup, or crease Paul-Gabry. And then, so here we got geometry, dynamic subdivision. This is where we're messing around. And then if I want to put a little fall off on there, I can do like crease level of 2, smooth set of 3. Nothing new for y'all. So if I want to put holes in here, what we did was basically go, you know what, let me go ahead and say Shift D to go out of here. I'm going to say geometry divide, and then delete lower. I can go back through here with my ZModeler brush, say insert single edge. Let's go ahead and get rid of this one. And now I've got enough geometry on here to support maybe putting 3 holes on here, but you can see they're not evenly spaced out. It's kind of, I gotta go through here and mush some geometry around, or rebuild some of this, or insert some edges and slide them. I don't know, kind of a pain, right? So instead of doing that, another thing you totally can do is take your crease subdivision levels up to 15, so you get razor sharp edges. Not normally what we're looking for, but in this case, what we're looking for. And then another thing you can do, go through here, grab a cylinder, and just kind of punch it through. And if you drag out a cylinder and then push back, it'll actually extend and lengthen it. And then we'll go ahead and punch this through the object. I'm going to do a split unmask points or mask points, doesn't really matter. I'm gonna hold down shift and turn everything off except for these 2 objects we're working with. This cylinder here can be a little better. It's a little, it has dynamic subdivisions on, so let's hit, let's go down here to geometry crease here, and that's punched through our object. So now we have this object here, and then this object here we want to set to subtractive, and then we turn on live Boolean, it'll punch a hole through here. These are live Booleans. We can go through here. If you want to scale down just one axis, just go ahead and hold down Alt, and that'll go ahead and scale down that, whatever axis you want really. hold down Control, or it just scales on the other 2 axes. Is that peripheral axis? And then Control drag this off. So now we have 3 holes punched through. Geometry can be arbitrary because we're going to rebuild it really quickly. But that would be a good way to go about kind of positioning and putting these where you want it without having to worry about, box modeling skills. Especially on a curved surface with round things punched in. Those can be tricky sometimes. Although rebuilding this is also going to be tricky because ZBrush is going to have to think about a lot of things. Anyway, we have our object here. Let's go into Boolean dynamic subdivision on, because we have dynamic subdivision on to get a little bit rounder surfaces. Make Boolean mesh. It's just sitting out here. I'm just going to insert it into our scene. Mesh. We'll go into solo mode so we can just check this out. So now we have really nice holes poked through, but kind of crappy geometry. But you do have polygroups where you need them. Even polygroups down here. So when you go in here and say ZBrush half, depth size down to 0, nice even quads, keep groups, smooth groups down to 0 because they're already smooth, ZBrush. Now you can rebuild this geometry based on where you punch those things. Now, like I said, curved surfaces with round things punched into them, this is the way to go, in my opinion. Building that with box modeling and edit control loops and stuff is a nightmare. It is having a little bit of problems here. You can keep trying. You can go with ZBrush half, or you could even, one thing you could do is maybe take your adaptive size up so it can kind of build more geometry around these plane changes, which might help. And then also, you could even isolate just this top piece and just say delete hidden and then ZBrush here, whatever you see. Again, it's having a little bit of a problem keeping these perfectly round. Through no fault of its own, really. This is kind of a tricky one for it. But it's not terrible, so say half one more time. Oh, you don't even need key groups on anymore. Just turn that off. And even this, we could modify this. We can go in here and say, okay, delete a single poly, and then go through here and just kind of move stuff around. It is kind of fudgy. It's not beautiful, but get the work done. And then I'm going to hop back into my ZM slice, and we're just going to slice up through that geometry. Let's do an uncrease all. So I can, again, move stuff around, flip any edges you might need to flip, or maybe we can go through here and we can say, you know what, give me a little split on that edge, and then give me a little delete on this edge here, so I can kind of go through and anything that's not resolving exactly how you'd want, you can go through and rebuild it. Not overly concerned about this, but let's call it a day. Go back in here, Q mesh polygroup all, we'll pull down, go into flip underneath your way down here, display properties, flip our normals. Let's go ahead and increase PG. This polygroup, since we just extruded it, didn't retain obviously our other polygroups. We'll go ahead and make this our own polygroup here, Control W. Let's do another increase PG, and then now we've got holes poked through where we want them. It's rebuilt, they're round enough. You can go through here after hitting dynamic, which is D on your keyboard, and kind of go through and mess around with these. So then it's another way to poke holes through stuff. Well, I love you too, thank you. Best retopologize photogrammetry mesh. Actually, just yesterday, all my topology methods, let's just go into videos here. Right here. Oh, wait. Oh, that's me right now. It's like, didn't I rename this? Making shoes in ZBrush. Click this one here. And all throughout here, I think I've got it broken up into chapters too. So, polypaint images to volumes, and I was dragging, and you can see I look like hammered dog turds that I actually got a full night's sleep last night ish. So apologize for last time. I was hurting on Tuesday. Detail shoe rubber signs, polygroup border for stitch. Okay, mask and ZBrush shoe panel, topology brush for shoe panel, Z-sphere topology for shoe panel, Z-modeler topology for shoe panel. So this whole block section right here is just all the topology techniques kind of thrown at you, minus, going into any other program. It's basically everything's quad draw, give or take. So we're going to say, I'll share this with you. That starts right at the mask and ZBrush here. So if you start here and watch the next 3 chapters, share, start at, copy, knock yourself out. That'll be all the topology methods I have, minus what I would do for photogrammetry. If it's going to be a static mesh, just decimate it. Go up here to Z plugin, decimation master, preprocess current, and then decimate. Now don't do that to this mesh because this mesh doesn't have any real geometry. If you want to decimate this, then go in here to dynamic apply, and that's under your geometry menu, dynamic apply, and then it'll be real geometry, and then you can decimate it down. That's what I do. Sorry, let me go to the top. How'd you make the laces? Yeah, yeah, let's go over the laces too. Yeah, there's some good. If you do need to get caught up on ZBrush, if you go to my ArtStation page, it starts with these little folded down corners kind of in the middle. Here's the intro, 50 videos to get you up and running, and then here's the what's new all the way back to 4R8. So if you need to get caught up, you know, caught up on the new features, you can watch these back at 2x speed. Get real sick of my voice. Complex model and ZBrush keeping proportions in mind. You start simple. Just like anything you do. In fact, just like what we did, even for a shoe here, this is basically our lifeline. There we go. Sorry, I got some cold brew to keep me awake. This is basically it. You start simple, you get your volume. Now, I spent more time than I really wanted to, but get your volumes correct, and then you can use this to kind of refer back to. It's the world's simplest model. There's nothing going on here. That's basically what you do for anything. Keep your purport, get your volumes correct, and then any details you add or any extra stuff you add to it, it's just extra stuff on top of it. And if you want to keep yourself, what's the word I'm looking for? Keep yourself, as you're building stuff and getting more complex, self-checking would be going here like texture, import, add your images, and that we did that yesterday too. Just added our reference to Spotlight, and then you can always go through here and just check yourself. You know, you've got your images in here, so you can go back and be like, hey, I've been working on this a while. Let me recheck my proportions. Keep you honest is what I was looking for in my age-addled brain here. So we have these panels here that we were talking about. So now these two working things you don't really need anymore. So we can just go back in here and say delete. Okay, delete. Okay, so now we've got this thing. Now how do we make this look a little bit more like it should? So just to kind of clue us in here, I'm going to grab this. So it's kind of like, it kind of bubbles out along the edges, and then it kind of inflates in the middle. And then these stitches we're probably going to do in the texture today, as opposed to doing it in ZBrush. We did go over the ZBrush stitches last time, basically framing. Let me turn everything else back on. Turn this off here. Basically framing a polygroup border to put on stitches through a little custom stitch brush that we made last time. Anyway, so we've got, let's go up here. We're working on this panel. So now a couple different ways we can detail this out. One easy way, and we kind of need this to be real geometry as we're going. So again, we can go back into our dynamic settings and say, you know what, let's do a crease level of 2, smooth subdiv of 3, just to get a little fall off on that edge. You can smooth that, but let's do it right now. Why not? So we'll go ahead and say dynamic apply. So this is real geometry now. So if we go over here, we have actual subdivisions as opposed to just a preview subdivision. So now we can go through here and we can sculpt on, turn RGB off, I see it on, we can sculpt on this as real geometry. One thing you can do if you want to kind of, let's do Control D one more time, just get a little bit more geometry, 171,000 for this one now. You can go into deformation, polish, and just drag that up a couple times, and that'll actually give you that kind of inflated, rounded edge along here. It's okay for clothy type stuff. The Kiosk Masons guys do that for some of their kind of cloth panels as a kind of first setup. If you haven't checked out their channel, go check that out. They're obviously really good. And then, okay, so now we have, we can use these polygroups to our advantage too. So we are polygroups. So let's go hold down Control Shift, select rectangle. I'm going to grab this one, Control Shift S to shrink a couple times, Control Tap to mask, Control Shift Tap to bring everything back. Now we've got kind of these interior spaces selected. And now I'm going to go through here. I'm going to hold down Control and Tap to kind of blur this mask, and then Control Alt Tap to sharpen it up. And I can just kind of hop back and forth between those. Control Tap to invert my mask, and then just go into deformation, maybe inflate 4 or so, and then I'll kind of give you that kind of, and it's not perfect, so feel free to massage your masks and do whatever you need to here. You can go back in here and kind of smooth any transitions, take our smooth intensity down a bit because I've got that set to smooth stronger, you know, and refined this just to kind of give it a little bit more, it's a little bit closer to like, okay, stitched along the edge. And then we'll talk a little bit more about if you really want to put in those recesses for the stitches in ZBrush, which again, if you're going to put the stitches in your texture, not really necessary, but we can talk about it if you're going to like 3D print this shoe or something and then go around and wear a big plastic 3D printed shoe for some reason. So now we've got this. Of course, you can also go in here manually and just inflate, right? As needed. You can even isolate by a polygroup and Control-Shift-S and mask and blur your mask and invert your mask and then go back in with your inflate brush, however you want to do this. Okay, now what else did we do? It was that, and then we'll talk about stitches in a second, and then oh yeah, so like clothy type stuff. This is basically, we can go down like, let's go down to level 3 or something, and then just hold down, let's go into our lazy radius, that's under your stroke lazy mouse, and then we'll hold down Alt and just kind of pull across. Let's do a lot less intense Z intensity for this one, and we can just kind of dial in some wrinkles, again just based on your reference, or if you're posing it and the foot is bent, you can put wrinkles where it makes sense basically. And these are subtle, there's not, it's kind of just a flat piece of leather, so we can go through here and we can just say, you know, you can use the inflate brush for this, just kind of go through and hold down Alt to dig in and let go of Alt to pull out. And now we've got some wrinkles. If you want to kind of pump up the jam, we can go in here, we can turn off light Boolean. Let's go into, I should probably keep this up just for monitoring. Yeah, we're okay. So we want to add some wrinkles to this, and you can sculpt them. You can also go into, you know, you can go brush, cloth. We talked about this last time. B, C, you know, any of the cloth brushes you want to kind of use. If you want to limit how much this affects your object, you can go in here to thick skin, turn that on, and then now it's going to be like pushing cloth across like a foam core or something like that. But what I'm going to do is go into my pinch brush, and right now it just pinches, which is useful. You know, you can just pinch geometry, and thick skin is on, so it's actually limiting the effect this is having. So we can turn that off, and now you're getting the full pinch effect. We can also go in here to elasticity, take simulation durations up to 100, and that'll turn on cloth for this. So you can either go into dynamics and drop your, or increase your firmness if you want bigger wrinkles, or even just go into your geometry and give it less geometry to worry about, and now you can kind of just dial in just a little bit more, wrinkle action, and then go back up. So there's that, and then so you can also go in here with like a chisel brush or an Orbs Cracks or a Damien standard brush and go through here manually and just kind of dig in where stitches are going to go. You got to be careful, you got to have better hands than I do. So one other thing you can do is you can, let's go ahead and duplicate this off, and let's try and use this geometry to add edge loops around here. What's an easier way to do that than we did last time by insetting? Let's see if we can do this. Let's go down here to geometry. Let's go down to subdivision level 4 and say delete lower, maybe subdivision level, oops, level 3, delete lower. So now we've got some edge rings that kind of follow the geometry that we could use to our advantage. So let's go ahead and take this top piece off, and I'm going to say, yeah, this will work, delete hidden. I'm going to go through here and I'm going to say, okay, I want to put a poly group right along here. Oops, delete higher, sorry. We want to get rid of all the subdivision history and all the hidden geometry. I'm going to go through here and say poly group this thing, and then we're going to go in here and we're going to say inset poly group all. We're going to go ahead and inset this one, and we're going to say Q mesh polygroup all, and hold down shift and push this back, and then crease PG, and then, you know, let's go ahead and crease our open borders too. So now we can hit D for dynamic, and then we get a line following this. And of course you can make this as thick or thin as you want. You can go through here and, you know, move this around to kind of even this out, and we can use this to project back to, so we don't have to kind of guess, you know, or have a really steady hand where this needs to go. So I'm going to hold down Control and tap to store these points in history, and then we can go back to our original mesh, and then we can go in here to our BHR history recall brush, and we can use this to kind of project back here. Now you could do like, you know, project history, and that'll project it, but you're gonna, you know, oh, I should have had, while I'm using this, make sure you have backface masking on underneath your brush. Auto masking, backface mask. So that way when you're pulling detail in, you're not grabbing stuff from the back accidentally. You could also just isolate this top poly group and then do a project history just to project all that. Or in this case, we might even be able to go, hey, let me grab this, do Control-Shift-S to shrink, Control-Tap to mask, Control-Tap to invert, and then we'll grab these two, and we'll Control-Tap to mask. So now I've only unmasked these, and then, I don't know, this gets a little bit silly as I'm walking through it, but if you just want to just mask only, or unmask only where you want to project, and then you can do a project history, project the rest of your mesh, then you can get those lines back and then refine that as needed. You could do that. Okay, let's go ahead and delete. Let's undo that. That's one thing. So here's our single-sided mesh. Now you could have done that on the double-sided mesh too, whatever you want to do, but I'll go ahead and delete that out of there. That's just like using a completely different mesh to dial in your details. You could use the existing geometry too. Let's go ahead and undo all that. Come on. Jeez. Thank God for ZBrush's 10,000 undos. So we've got this here. You can go through, I believe, we can still go through here and like select last. Let's hold down Control and tap this history twice just to get rid of that history stored. So if we go through here and like, okay, I like this line here. Okay, so we can just get that line, Control-Shift-Drag, Control-Tap to mask just that line, invert that, and then we can just say, you know, let's deflate this and just put a line right along there. So you don't have to go and project. That's just if you want to use a completely different line. This is just another way you can go through and just add, using the existing geometry. We'll go ahead and smooth that a bit. So there we go. So a couple different ways to kind of add that type of thing. Also, what else was I doing? Seemed like I was doing something else. I don't know. Do that for your panels, I suppose. Now, if we delete that out of here and we hide this out of our scene, we're back kind of back where we started. I think that's how, I mean, again, just maybe an hour and a half throughout the day yesterday, taking it from the panels we had made to this point, so not a ton of time. I do need to fix this. This was just for a high res render, and I just went through and actually added this as detail. So I'm going to go back down to subdivision level 1, delete higher, and then D for dynamic. And I'm not going to be able to do that, am I? Let's isolate just this poly group here. I'm going to go through and just run a polish on it. Okay, that'll work for me. Oh boy, let me get caught up here. Laces, yes, we'll do that next. Hey, thanks everybody. Glad you can make it. That's what 3D Substance Modeler. I thought good for ideation, but has issues. Hey, who doesn't have issues? I certainly do. Tutorial. I love you too. Thank you. Is this? You have a tutorial where your keyboard strokes are shown on the stream. I don't know that my keyboard strokes will help you that much because I use custom hotkeys. So like Alt S is my standard brush, Alt B is my clay buildup, Alt A is my custom menu. So it's not like those aren't like ZBrush hotkeys. Those are just my hotkeys. Of course, if you're new to ZBrush, go to this intro to ZBrush, and that will take you to in here. Custom, and you can just watch. You watch it here. You can watch it on YouTube. So hey, I'm watching it here, or I want to hop over to YouTube, and in here, there, if you do a Control F for find, and we're going to look for custom. Creating, saving custom brushes is a good one, and then also down here, intro to ZBrush, create your own custom interface and marking menu or menus, so you can assign hotkeys to those. So both of those videos, and I'll go ahead and here this one more time. You can check those out, and that'll get you kind of set up to do your own custom menus and your own custom hotkeys and stuff like that. I need to find a key thing that I can move anywhere. There's good ones out there, but they all want, I work on a very small portion of my monitor, and then I have a huge monitor around this, and I can't get it to move and stay where I want it to. I've never been able to download and use a key stroke showing program that'll do that. So if you know one, let me know. Think about AI replacing or changing workflows dramatically for 3D will come later, but I worry if those skills remain relevant. Yeah, that's weirdly Black Mirror-ishly exciting. If you guys want, we can hop into Discord and do some Mid-Journey. That might be fun. Speaking of, yeah, of course. I'm not going to be one of those people, you know, if you go back and read on like germ theory and stuff, like the smartest minds in the world were like, oh, germs, that's what a dumb thing. I'm a professor in Scotland and the smartest man in the world, and I think that's dumb, and it's all about the humors and little gremlins that make us sick or something. Not even that close. And then of course, you know, you learn about germ theory and all sorts of cool things that go along with that. So for me to go like, oh, we'll never be replaced by, oh, we're too smart. Of course, we'll be replaced by systems. And also, I don't think we're as good at what we do as we think we are. Of course, there's human creativity, and you know, we're as a entity, we're really, really cool. I think we do some horrible things, but we also are capable of doing some really neat things. But at the end of the day, like a process, even I mean, I'm not going to say this is art by any means, making a shoe, but let's say that I'm making something beautiful, or making a film, or making a novel or something. At the end of the day, if you can break that down to a series of, and it's how we work too. We look for patterns. We create a series of, we do an outline. We do a series of steps in order to create the final product. Even making this, you know, you could teach a machine to go through and do your steps. And then you could even have random seeds and sliders that will go in and dial in like, well, I want more of this and less of this. Certainly, eventually, maybe not in my lifetime, but certainly there will be, hey, I want to watch a movie starring these people with this plot, with this director, shot with this film, and you could absolutely, you can just have that movie made on the fly. Again, we're talking like Westworld / Black Mirror / you know, any dystopian. Because of course, if we ever get to that point, we've already, you know, like I said, we're capable of great things, and we're also capable of atrocities. So I'm sure by the time we get to that point, I used to think we would end up like, oh, we'll all be on. This was a while back, but I used to think like, hey, eventually we're all going to be on the Starship Enterprise. We're going to figure this stuff out. We're going to be good. I don't know that that's necessarily the case anymore. But yeah, we'll be replaced by AI. Probably not in our lifetime, but varying degrees of being replaced maybe. But then again, there's always something else to do, right? Probably we'll be okay. I don't know, maybe not. We'll see how it goes. When consider making an ArtStation page, plus I'm relatively new. Start now. No, I mean, put yourself out there, and if you put something out there and you come back a month later and you're like, ooh, I need to get rid of that, just delete it. No worries there. How can I sell myself as a junior artist who wishes to learn and grow? Yeah, you could just, I mean, you don't necessarily market yourself as a junior artist, but yeah, you can put your art up there, get some feedback on it, get better. I mean, I'm not proud of really any of this, but it's still up there. Just for, I don't know, if I was going to be like, hey, this is the type of artist I am, I would probably reconfigure this page, because it's really just a hodgepodge of trash, give or take. But yeah. Make one. Yes, and as far as like, you know, being able to do production work and using AI as a tool, you know, that's even better. Probably, hopefully, and even this is kind of cool too. You can do the, like, going down that path of even tools getting smarter. So if I go up here and I'm like, hey, you know what? Eventually, I mean, they already are. They're writing tools where you go in here and it'll actually be like in Photoshop. There'll be smarter selections, things that are really boring or really tedious to do manually. You know, again, it goes through, well, these are the steps the artist does. These are the shapes that it looks for on the screen. And occasionally, if you go into Photoshop and say, hey, select my subject, that's such a broad term, but occasionally, and I would say 65% of the time, it'll select your subject really well in a couple seconds. Faster than I certainly could, and faster than even a good Photoshop person could. Of course, the other times it doesn't do a great job, and then of course, you know, 5% of the time it'll crash Photoshop. but you know, these things take time. Let me see, panels and model. Okay. Oh, on-screen tablet or the normal one. I'm just using, actually right now I'm using the Zency Labs. If you want more information on that, I think, yeah, here we go. Tablet review, copy link address. You can check out what I'm using right there. Sorry, it keeps bumping me down every time. Stitches in human skin. Yeah, well, you know what? We'll talk about stitches right after we do laces. And if I miss a question, I apologize. They're coming in fast and furious. Let's see here. Panels on a model. I'm doing Z-modeler, creating blockouts. My question is, how can I do the same pen primitive and sculpt shapes? I'm doing is using Z-modeler for creating a blockout. Okay. And Z-modeler for your blockouts, that would, depending on what you're blocking out, might be a little tedious. You know, I use Z-modeler a lot, but I'm not like a Vitali guy where I'm going in there and just creating my final model using Z-modeler, because that's, for me, and I'm not saying this is for everybody, but for me, that just does not work. So number one, maybe doing Z-modeler for your blockout might be a little harder. And then as far as like appending stuff, that's like exactly like what you said, is if you just want to apply something, you know, put a panel on here with the like sculpting, you could actually, now that I think about it, if we go through here and let's say render, fade opacity down a little bit. Again, you can mask and ZBrush all this stuff, but also if you have a morph target stored, you can say morph target, store morph target, go in here with your clay buildup brush. If you just want to be real artsy and creative and sculpty, you can go through here and just start making changes to this. It's like, okay, I've made changes, right? You can do create a difference mesh, and that'll just put out a difference mesh of what you've changed since you've done your morph target, and then you've got kind of a panel. It's not great, but I don't know. There may be something you can use in here, I suppose, if you just wanted. Oh, another thing too is you can do an extract. That's something we didn't really talk about. Let's go ahead and delete that morph target here. You can go through here, and again, you can mask here, and we'll say Control Alt drag unmask, and then we can go through here and extract some stuff. I don't do it a ton, but you can extract. That'll give you a preview of what your extract's going to look like. You can smooth it or add it more thickness, whatever you want to do. We'll say accept. That'll put it into its own subtool. Let's go ahead and get rid of that little mask we had there. Delete hidden. We'll have a few polygroups on all sides. Let's go back to render, fade opacity down. So we can go through here and do let's do a polish by features, open circle, just to polish the hell out of those edges. And then now we're off to the races. And this could be just something you want to sculpt on. You know, go through here and Dynamesh it or sculpt on this. Or you could even say, you know, ZBrush half, that size down to 0, keep groups, move groups down. Brand new mesh, or if you want them the same on both sides, you can just say grab this one here, delete hidden, let's ZBrush half a couple more times, and then Q mesh, polygroup ball, flip, and then now you can kind of crease PG, D for dynamic, crease level of 2, smooth set of 3, and now you can use this as your starting point. Or like you were saying, you could just go through here and say, I want to append a sphere, split mass points, scale it down, let's not scale it down that much. Dynamesh it at whatever resolution you want, and now you've got a mush, a mushy mesh you can go through and, you know, do whatever you want to it. Have fun with it. So a couple more options for you. Yeah, stitches we'll get to. Deflated tire with the dynamic cloth system. Yeah, we did that. It's been a while. If you go to, again, ArtStation and then ZBrush 2021, what's new? I think let's just, okay, we got 106 videos for ZBrush 2021. It was a beast of a release. But over here, yeah, car simulation. So I think we did do, like, basically you just drop it. I mean, here's a car wrecking into a pole, but you can also, I think I did a version where I was playing around with this, and you actually just kind of drop it onto the ground and the tires will deflate. Essentially what it would be is we've got a cylinder here, and we'll just, yep, and we'll say make polymesh 3D, and okay, let's do this. Let's say inset flat island legacy, and we'll pull this in. We'll make a tire real quick, and then we'll say let's Q mesh this through. Q mesh polygroup ball, just push that on through. Let's go through here and geometry, edge loop, delete loops, just to get rid of those extraneous loops. And we'll grab this one here. So insert single edge loop, hold on. There's a million ways to make tires, but this is one. And then we'll say, you know, group by normals, geometry modify topology, mirror and weld across the x-axis. We could even go through here. I mean, you could bevel these, but you can also go in here to bevel, hold down control, and bevel in between all your polygroups here. So now we have a tire. We'll hit D for dynamic, and then, you know, we'll go ahead and apply this geometry. So now we should have a floor that'll appear wherever the bottomest part of our subtool is. So when you go in here to dynamics, you can say, hey, everybody, here's our floor collision. So if we just drop this down right now, I guess dynamics, run simulation, too fast. Gravity strength way down. Here's what just, and you can run the simulation at a very slow pace, or you can go in here to BTC transpose cloth, and then now you can control where this hits. If it's not doing exactly what you want, you may need to go through here and help it out a little bit. So I would say, don't use the knife brush in this case, use the clip curve. That'll actually just push this geometry up. So it's still there. You're not slicing anything. But now we can go through here and be like, okay, this is the new bottom of this tire, right? Excuse me. So now BTC again, transpose cloth. So now when we push this down, we can kind of get a little bit of that kind of deflated tire look. Does that make sense? And then you can go through, you can even art direct this too. You can go through here and let's crank our intensity up a little bit. So if you want to be like, I want more wrinkles on this, just put in where the wrinkles you want. And then again, with our pinch brush with elasticity turned on, you can go through here and you can kind of emphasize what you'd like. You can also, while you're doing this, if you want to do like an inflate and an expand, this isn't going to look great, but you can also go through here as you're running simulation or using your brushes. It'll go through and, so if we're doing our pinch brush and we have these options turned on, it'll actually inflate a little bit while you're using it. So that'll give you a little extra emphasis oomph, while you're using your cloth brushes or running your simulation. Have you tried to model some of your Midjourney renders? We'll do that at some point for sure, I think. Absolutely, way over in Serbia. Excellent, excellent. Okay, oh, we did the flat tire. How can you tell the size of something before you 3D print it? Okay, so up here in the Z plugin, there's a lot of really cool options for like 3D Print Hub. What I do, and we did, I haven't actually put this out there yet, have I? It's not even here. Warhammer 40K Ultramarine Part 1. We go through all the, like, how I set up my scenes for scale and stuff like that. It's like right at the beginning here, so I'll drop this in here. And share, start at. This is how I do most of my ZBrush scale stuff. And then we also talk about how to use stuff in here, like your preferences. Where is it? It's called the, come on, man, transpose. Transpose units. You can set up your, if you hit W and then you hit Y, or you turn this off here, you can use these to measure millimeters or inches or whatever you want to set that to. So that's all in there. Cool, cool. AI for good UVs and retopology. Absolutely. That's the one thing is like, there's some really tremendous things it could do where it's like, hey, ZRemesher isn't giving me exactly what I want. Well, a human being has to go in and make the exact right decisions, but eventually, you know, robot eyes will be able to look at the problem and go, oh, I see what you want to have happen. And then you can, maybe you can type in the name of the person, the personality who, you know, I want to retopologize this in the kind of like Mozart doing different music by different people. It's like, I want this retopology in the tune of this person, and it'll retopologize based on what decisions that type of person makes. Probably not to that level of granularity, but you could do it. I have Twitch, I have YouTube. That seems to be all that's popping up here. How would you tackle the sole bottom details? So this type of detail would be go into Photoshop, and I'm probably not going to do that because this is going to be super tedious. Go into Photoshop and recreate it and match the bottom of my foot, or take it into Photoshop, take this out, and make a bunch of black and white for a height map to apply. If I was doing something, we covered this in the other stream too. We'll go ahead and load up my Ultramarine because that's a good example. That was streaming 40K ZBrush. Block out refine. if I'm doing something big and chunky, what I would do is basically what I did in this boot tutorial here. So if you go to my ArtStation page, scroll down until you see a big boot in here. And this is older. There's a couple things I do differently than this, but it's still mostly relevant. So back down here is essentially go through and have a nice Z modeler block out, and then go through and just have objects here, and then Boolean those objects together. And I wouldn't even use Dynamesh. I would Boolean these objects together and then ZRemesh the result. This is kind of a crummy result. That's not bad, but similar to that. If I go out of solo mode and we look at the bottom of this guy's feet, this was essentially exact same way, only using, let's do solo 2, smooth div of 3. Yeah, start out with the simple shape and then put the objects, the Boolean objects on top of this, and then either subtract them or add them, and then ZRemesh that result, and that'll get you this type of tread. But for that really complex tread, oops, let's delete all. It would probably be easier with just recreating this with a height map and then applying it to the bottom of your foot. But boy, is that ever tedious. So what a real pro does is just give the illusion that this is done, and then you just set your shot up so that you don't see it. The illusion of completion. Goes a mix of poly group. Terrible result on the surface. There's a way to work with that plane on the Dynamesh, or it requires some volume. Yes, you have to have volume if you're using Dynamesh. It has to be yeah, or else it'll get that kind of spiderwebby look. Because what Dynamesh does is close holes. It runs a close holes operation first. And if you have a very flat surface that's just one-sided, it'll close a hole, and then who knows what you're getting at that point. Cool. 3D. I've been doing 3D for 2 years. In the beginning, I had a lot of progress. It feels like I'm stuck. Any advice? Same thing as if you're working out. When you first start lifting weights, let's say, you're let me see, go out of edit mode. Control N. Let's just draw in ZBrush. We'll go in here and we'll say simple brush with a alpha 6. So basically, when you're first starting out lifting weights, you're going to be like here, and you're going to try to bench press, and you're going to be able to bench press the bar and maybe some tens, and then you're going to say, okay, I'm going to work out every, be careful, you don't want to hurt yourself. So we're going to say, 5 days a week, you'll do chest and tries, and then back and buys, and then legs, and then cycle back through, and then give yourself a day of rest, etc., etc. And while you're doing that, you're going to be benching 10 pounds, and then you're going to be benching the 25s eventually, and then you're going to be benching the 45s, and then the 45s, and you're going to be like this, and you're going to be like, you were doing nothing down here, and all of a sudden you got plates on there, and you're just killing it. But then eventually, if you had exponential growth like this, you would be like, okay, now you're the Hulk, and now you're Galactus Eater of Worlds, and now you're the Beyonder, right? It's not how that works, unfortunately. So Marvel references for everybody. So instead of this, what's going to happen is eventually you're going to be like, well, now I'm benching plates and 25s, and now I'm benching 2 plates. That's my new max, and then you're 2 plates and 2.5s, and actually what'll happen is you'll do 2 plates, and then you put on the 5s, and that's just a little too much, so you go back to the 2.5s that nobody wants to use, so don't tell anybody, but have a spotter. You can tell your spotter. So eventually you'll be doing this, and then so at this point you kind of want to do is, and again, do this carefully and safely. In the art world, I don't know what the equivalent of that is. Be kind to yourself, but you kind of want to shock your system. So you kind of want to change up your routine, change up your workout, do your workout backwards, do different types of workouts so that you can kind of get a little bit of this back, but just be realistic with the expectations. Again, it's not going to turn you into this real quick, but eventually it'll kind of get you back into an upswing instead of this, and this is basically maintenance phase. Instead of this, you'll start doing this. And this and this, and just be aware that this is now the results you're going for. This is the most exciting time to be in, is that new artists seeing new stuff. But in the art world, it's way better because you're not just trying to get a better bench press. There's so many facets to art that you're working on that if you get not bored, but if you want to get better at modeling, well, what's a ancillary, or what's a complementary skill to modeling? Is that rigging and animation so that you can become a better modeler? Or is that concepting so you can become a better modeler? Upstream and downstream complementary skills. So you start working on being a better concept artist, or start working on being a better rigging artist, and that'll help you be a better modeler, and that'll help you, be a better modeler. And then also you've got these other parallel paths that you're getting better at, and be an environment artist, better lighting, material, texture artist, as opposed to incremental gains in being a better box modeler or being a better sculptor or something like that. Although those are still fine. Be the best sculptor you can be, and that's it, and you'll still get a good job. Netting, I know we've done. So any time you get stuck, let's see. Here's some fishnet. These are a little older, but these Micropoly is where I would start. It's basically you'd make a volume. Let's turn one of these into a fishnet. So I'm going to take this one here. Yeah, we can just do this. Let's go back here. And we want to determine where we want our fishnets to be. Now, netting can sometimes be a little tricky because your geometry has to be exactly perfect. Same thing with chain link or chain mail. We'll go in here to mask pen. I say this area right here I want to have be fishnet. So let's go ahead and duplicate this off. Control W, Control Shift Tap, delete hidden. Looks like I made this the same polygroup, huh? Delete hidden, and then I want to turn this. So let's go ahead and make those edges a little smoother so when we zero mesh it has an easier time. So masking, mask our open border, Control Tap to invert that, polish by features under deformation, and then let's go ahead and turn our polypane off here so you can see what we're doing. Zero mesh half, depth size down to 0. We don't need to detect edges. So yeah, just zero mesh half. And now again, adapt the size down to 0 so we get nice even quads, so we can eventually turn this geometry into netting. And that's going to be, again, multiple ways to do this, but go in here and say dynamic smooth subdivide down to 0, micropoly on. You can make your own custom micropoly, or you can just grab any one of these. So if we grab what's a simple one? There's grid, cross net's kind of cool. Simple, perfect. So here's a simple net, and again, these are just instances of geometry. So you could even go through here like we were doing earlier. So here's our floor. It's just simple geometry. So if we just go and run, stop, turn off expand. There we go. So just run the simulation. A little more gravity here. That'll actually collide with the floor. But again, it's not real. It's just this geometry driving that simulation. So yeah, that's one way you can create kind of netting, is just micropoly. Probably my preferred method. Education, of course, I'm happy to do it. Hopefully it's worthwhile. We get a good couple hours a month. OnlyFans account, absolutely. If I thought I could make money from it, I'd do it. Although I'm super lazy too, so it'd be the world's laziest OnlyFans. Any tool or feature you know of that you don't see a lot of people use or know of? These are good questions. Most of the stuff, when I'm doing my live streams, you'll see me use the same stuff over and over again. As we're working today, I'll try and think of those. I'll try and think of stuff that's like a little out there that might be like, oh, you know what? Maybe use this weirdo thing that's hidden away. It's still possible to self-learn ZBrush 3D with watching YouTube? Yeah, absolutely. I think so. Yeah, your head's gonna hurt. My head hurts. Like, I've been doing this 20 years, and my head hurts every day. But I think hopefully that's good positive growth and not like a tumor or something. But well, that's the thing too, is like when we were talking about that exponential growth, if your head's not hurting, then you're probably stagnating, right? Within reason. Don't kill yourself, but be smart about how much you're taking on. You don't want to overwhelm yourself, but if you want growth, you got to be a little uncomfortable. If you're totally comfortable, you're probably in a rut. And that rut, our technology is increasing. What's cool, so fun about this industry is it's constantly evolving. What's so scary about this industry is constantly evolving. So if you're not learning new things, not only are you in a rut that's kind of plateaued, you're probably also, because everything else is having this trajectory, the whole industry is constantly moving up. If you're not learning, you're actually kind of going down a little bit. You're kind of sinking. So, and that's not true in every case, but generally speaking, it's good. Keep yourself mildly uncomfortable so you're always kind of growing. Yeah, good morning to yourself. Hey. My internet should be okay. I hope. I've got 1,000 up, 1,000 down, so hopefully it's not on my side. Let's see. Oof. Is it really that bad? I'm not sure. I'm not even sure how to control that. Hopefully it's, again, not on my side. How could poly count for all subtools and low poly at one time? Is it possible? How do you count poly count for all the subtools and low poly? Yeah, so what you can do is you can go down here to all low, so you've got all your low res objects in here, and then you can just do a merge visible, and then actually, yeah, that'll work. So then merge visible here, so now you've got your poly active poly. Let's just hover over this. So our poly is 9,874. One way to do it. And then we'll go in here to all high, and then your total point count is up here. Oh, actually, yours is maybe over here. I thought I forgot to move that around. I was trying to explain to people how putting on the 3D artist lens on is extreme taxing mentally. Hell, man, starting, you know, I started my new job at Dairy Queen, and that was mentally taxing as hell. Customer service is mentally taxing, and also just mentally draining. Like, I have all the respect in the world for people who work customer service jobs, as I did it for Albertsons and Whataburger and Dairy Queen and Techco Mobile gas stations, and whew, you talk about mentally taxing. Customer service will do that to you. This is a mentally taxing in a different way. I think a better way. But yeah. All high work with dynamics of D as well, putting on and off dynamics of D and also tools. No, that doesn't. But what you can do is you can go into Z plugin. There's a Z repeat it. There's two things you can download. One is Clean Tool Utility, has a ton of cool stuff in here. If you want to convert your dynamic subdivisions to real geometry, you can use this DS All, but also you can just do that yourself using Z repeat it. You can go through here. It's just like action script recording in Photoshop. Just do something which is like, okay, turning on or off Dynamesh. I think I have that. Oh, maybe I don't. Just record yourself turning Dynamesh on or off, and then say repeat that action to all. Just record yourself doing it, and that'll do it for you. Cool. But I mean, all high and all low. All high and all low will do that without the script. But if you're talking about just dynamic, then turning that on and off, you can just use a script for that, or just record yourself. I agree. I think everybody should work in retail and have to deal with customers, because boy, if you've never had to do that, you're in for a treat. Okay, so laces. We're going to talk about laces and stitches. So for these laces, if I go into solo mode here, you see I got left laces and I've got right laces, and they do not match up. Now, the only reason I would need to go through here and be like, well, let me do this right. Let me grab some Z spheres and go back and forth and make geometry and make sure all these add up, is if I was going to like simulate me pulling these laces out at some point and animating them, and they all need to be contiguous or something. Or if I'm going to do like an exploded view and be like, hey, see how the laces all match up. If you're not going to do that, then don't do it the hard way, right? If I'm going to be, since all these things, most of these things have subdivision history, what I'm going to do is go in here and say insert just a polymesh star in the middle of my scene. In fact, this can be a name catcher. So instead of renaming, ZBrush is always going to rename your top subtool. So we can just have this garbage mesh sitting here. So if I go in here and say streaming Jordan's refine block out, so that'll catch my name. So when we go high and low res, that'll catch it. I'm going to hit, let's go out of, let's hit Y. So we're in gizmo mode here. I'm just going to, BTR is transpose, get out of transpose cloth, go to transpose regular. So this is going to be hiding out in the middle of our scene here, catching our name for us. And also, this doesn't have any subdivision history on it. So if at any point, if I'm working on this thing, doesn't even need to be visible, and I'm like, I need to use Topology Brush on this, or I need to do insert mesh, and all these things have subdivision history, I know I've always got this floating guy hanging out that I can use. So in this case, I'm going here to BTO for a Topology Brush. I want to make some laces. So I'm going to go through here. Let's turn our laces off. You and you. So now if we go this side to this side, and then this side to this side, and again, you could do like BI brush insert, IMM curve, and then grab a laces thing that you made, or even go in here to, let's undo this so I can show you. Or another one is brush curve flat snap or brush curve strap snap. You know, all these things where you can just drag this across and it'll try to stick to the surface, blah, blah, blah. I have a pretty good idea. There's even like a laces that you can use. But instead of trying to like wrangle geometry in a really complex pattern, we take the easy route. So we're going to go through here and it's like, okay, looking at my reference, the laces kind of go really thin and then thicken back out. So we'll just recreate that. So we're going to go really thin and then they're going to thicken back out and then go back to really thin. Again, you can do that with an IMM brush, but it's easy enough just to go through here and be like, okay, give me my laces. And it's going to be sticking to the surface, so it's going to kind of be a little wobbly, but we'll fix that. Again, we can just take our brush size to whatever thickness we want and then tap away from the curve, and that'll give us our lace. So now this is still stuck to our little floating star in here, so I'm going to do a quick split mask points. So now it's on its own subtool. And now we have our lace. And if I want to smooth this out, and again, we have polygroups. So we have a top, a middle, and a bottom polygroup. So if I want to capture these edges here, I'm going to go down to Control Shift, Control W on those edges. So those have different polygroups here. So now if I go in, and those are, these are considered a feature. So, you know, either a creased edge or a polygroup border. So if I go in here and polish by features, open circle is going to just polish the hell out of it. It's going to turn it into a cube or a rectangle. But if we go open circle and we just tap, that'll maintain our volumes and then just kind of smooth the edges. So now we've got a nice smooth lace. And of course, if we want to go through here and say, you know, Q mesh, polygroup all, and hold down Shift as you push up, that'll thin the lace out. And then you can go through here and just kind of use your move brush to kind of wrangle these into place. If you want them to dip down a little bit, you can go through here. I'm just going to Control. Let's do two ways. So Control Tap. Oh, let's do this. Control Alt to unmask just this point, and then we can go through here and just Control drag this out to add an edge ring. Just kind of extrude an edge, basically. We can, you know, there's one way to do it. Or you can just grab this whole side over here and then just bend this down. You could use Z-modeler and extrude faces, obviously, and all that good stuff. So I'm going to do a quick uncrease all, then crease PG to crease our polygroups, and then we'll run another, just tap polish by features, and now these things kind of sink in a little bit more. And then now we can go through here, and these will be our laces. Now you may be thinking, well, that's a lot of work just to make one lace. But once you've made one lace, now you've got W, Control drag this up, move this around however you want, and you've basically got all the left and right laces for you. So you can always go back to this original one and then just go through here and do, you know, all the ones on the left side are essentially this. And then you go back and do the other side, and it'll take you, you know, 10 minutes to go through it. And that's one of those things like why I wouldn't want to do this on a live stream, is because it's just me doing really boring stuff. So put on your favorite Britney Spears album, or your Star Trek Voyager, all the stuff you watch or listen to, and go nuts. Or do this during a really boring meeting at work. So now you've got this. Oh, and actually these are not behaving like this. It doesn't go like that. I mean, some people may tie their shoes like that, but more likely it probably goes over under, and it probably skips one, right? So look at your reference and learn how human beings tie their shoes, and don't be an alien like me and be like, how do shoelaces work? But you know, you get the drill, and then you do the other side. Now, as far as, you know, hitting Control D to subdivide a couple times, or even better, going here to dynamic, say crease level of 2, smooth side of 3, or maybe even crease level of 1, you know, kind of soften that whole look out. And I'm like, okay, that's looking pretty good. So now we can go through here and say apply. And then now you've got real geometry. So you can just very quickly go through here and just kind of add a little bit of compression in here where it makes sense. And then again, if you want to add a little cloth, go into your pinch brush, make sure your elasticity is turned on here, simulation iterations, and you can just go through here and just kind of oomph that little cloth there. That's how I did the laces. I'm trying to think if there's anything specific that was different than that. I think that's about it. So after doing all that for 10-15 minutes, go ahead and delete this out of our scene, and we'll turn everything else back on except for these two here. There you go. And then you have laces like this. Oops, yeah, left and right. I think that's correct. Okay, let's see. Again, if I missed something, I apologize. There's a ton of stuff I need to go back up and look at. Do you know anything about sculpting with Tesstimate turned on and using Sculptors Pro without Adaptive Size turned on? I was told it was a good way to try. Yeah, so if you want the whole breakdown, so that was introduced in ZBrush 2018. So here's the 2018 what's new. Those are just demo projects. I'm sorry, that's confusing. So let's go back up to where the pages are turned. 2018. And then what's new? 56 videos in here. And then this is everything you'd want to know about Sculptors Pro settings. Not everything. I mean, everything I knew at the time. Sculptors Pro and testimating and values and all that good stuff. I don't sculpt with that a ton, honestly. Like there's very few. But again, I'm not really a ZBrush artist. I don't do a ton of. I don't do much. I don't get a lot done. But yeah, if you want the ZBrush 2018 stuff, there's a ton of features on there. So I'll link you to that. Yep, customer service, fun for everyone. YouTube 2x speed. I double the speed on everything YouTube too. That's why it makes me laugh when people are like, "You talk too fast," and I'm like, "Everyone else talks too slow," but I don't complain to them. I just change. That's another. Here's a pro tip. So if you're watching me and you're like, this guy is just not going the speed I want, I go in here every single YouTube video I watch, unless it's like Fail Army. Although Fail Army at a different speed might be funny. Going in here and just change it to whatever speed you want or whatever works for you, because that's what I have to do. So you have to do it too. Oh, nice. For beginners, what object is best to start sculpting on? Whatever, honestly, for beginners, whatever is going to make you sit down and sculpt. If you have to force yourself, sure, you can, no pain, no gain, right? But at the same time, it's like, find something that interests you so you'll be more motivated or enthralled with what you're working on, so you'll do more of it. As opposed to, if you hate doing it, then you're probably going to find tons of excuses why not to do it, right? So whatever is going to get you to sit in your seat and get work done. Yes, 75% customer service. That's what scares me about going on my own on something. ZBrush can design a car, but I didn't find anyone, of course, design a car. Only the outward appearance is the difficult with ZBrush. Yeah, I think there's ZBrush vehicle design. I want to say there's like an entire, if you go to like the Pixelogic website, we're doing a ton of tangents here, but hey, you know what? It's just a shoe. It's 3D Solid Z community, learn ZBrush community. I want to say somewhere on here there's like entire pages dedicated to industry, automotive design, just like people using ZBrush for car type stuff. ZBrush in the automotive industry. This and then for jewelry, illustration, 3D printing, education, vehicles. But yeah, to your point, like ZBrush is a great tool, but is it best for everything? Maybe not. So maybe you need to do a little bit CAD, a little bit ZBrush, a little bit traditional modeler, a little bit something else I don't even know about. Use it for what it's good for, right? It's just another tool in your tool belt. Chewing gum laces. A lot of this stuff can turn into, some of this stuff is a little chewy gummy for sure. Or yeah, flip-flops. That's my go-to. Cool. And actually, speaking of, beginner stuff, this guy right here is the new intro to ZBrush. I have an old intro to ZBrush part 1, where we go through, and it's just super basic stuff. It's really old, but at the same time, eventually what we do is we go through here and we just make weirdos things. So here's a beginner exercise head, make a bust, do a variant of that bust, make a creature, and then here's a cardinal dock worker, Victorian armor dock worker, then render setup. So I don't know, maybe go back in time 10 years and see if there's anything worthwhile in that. Cool. Yes. I'm not really a ZBrush artist. I'm director of character art. Can you collide and bulge out a mesh using ZBrush Cloth Solver? Yeah, it would be backwards though. So essentially, if I have this object here and I want it to, you know, be affected by something else, let's say, let's go back to our insert mesh brush. It doesn't have any, let's go here, A and B, Z sphere here. So I want this to be affected by this sphere. What you'd have to do, and let's take this one here and we'll say split mask points. We can go through here and say, I'm just going to hide show the relevant pieces here. I'm going to use W to move this out, and then we're going to go into BTC, and then we need to go ahead and say create a collision volume. So as I move this here, it'll be affected by that object, but you won't be able to be like, hey, let me take this collision object and put. Now, if you want to do that, we do talk a little bit. It won't be in ZBrush. It'll be we did this in Cinema 4D. But, you know, let's go in here to playlist, ZBrush, and, you know, I have got a whole playlist for it, ZBrush and Cinema 4D. So through here we do some of this, like soft body collision and dynamics with our SpongeBob character. It's just kind of fun. So, I don't know. I mean, again, it's another program. It's not ZBrush Cloth Solver, but if it's interesting to you, you can check that out. Cool. You know why surface noise on ZBrush is still pixelated? Even my model is 4 million. It may be your alpha is too low res, or it's too sharp and giving you aliased results on the geometry, maybe. Or 4 million isn't enough. Sometimes you'd be surprised how much geometry you need for really fine surface noise. And that's why if it's not, and then we'll get into stitches too right now, but if it's not affecting our, let's delete this out of our scene. And we'll move this back. If it's not affecting your silhouette, then doing it in the texture might be your best bet. But again, if you're gonna have to 3D print or something, but again, if it's super fine, then maybe, I don't know, that's a tough one. Baking Marmoset or Substance or another program. That's exactly right. I prefer baking in Marmoset. Sometimes I'll bake in Substance. I think today we'll bake in Substance if I can get there. 3 programs to use forever. Netflix. I don't know, some sort of noise software so I can sleep with some noise generating software, and what else do I watch a lot? I like HBO Max. Those are my 3. Like for making stuff, oh man, I can't pick 3. Yeah. Oh yeah, Maya's got some good end cloth stuff too you can use. Okay, so let's get cracking. So one thing we were doing is like creating these stitches is just simply, you know, passing an IMM brush with a custom stitch. We did that last time in our last video. We do have things like rolling alpha. So if we go in here to our brush menu and we go in here and say, oh boy, stop moving. Okay, stitch. So you have stitch brushes in here, so you can create your own alpha stitch rolling brushes. So you can go through here and create stitches like that. So that could be a good Frankenstein thing, like we were the question earlier. In fact, I do go through, if you want to use another cool option, let's go to where we have our Frankenstein guy. Give me Michael Pavlovich, please. So we do have a Frankenstein guy, ZBrush 2020, what's new? And to create these stitches, this was done with the, new features, time lapse. Okay, here's the what's new. This was history. This is a really cool one. Definitely check this out. The extractor brushes. Really, really fun to use. So this is an extractor brush with color. This is where we went through and did Frankenstein stitches. I wouldn't necessarily use this because it's a little limiting, but you can literally just create stitches on the fly, and then you can capture that with your extractor brush. So let's hop onto YouTube here and I'll copy this one to you. Oop, dang. There we go. Check this one out. So that would be another stitch option for you. Now, let's get out of ZBrush. I know I'm mostly ZBrush, but let's see if we can have a little bit of fun with this outside of ZBrush just for fun. If we want to fill this with color, there is color. No, it's under Z plugin. I think there's a color thing in here. You can use Z color. You can use this to go through and select. These are all mathematically separated values. So you can go through here and just fill. I also have a comma key. It's in my tool menu. This color swatches here. that I like to use. It's a little bit faster for me anyway. So I'm just going to kind of set this over here. We'll make it so you can see a little bit better. I'm going to hit go out of edit mode, so it just drops that to my canvas. Go back to my shoe and pull that out. So now we can start filling with these colors. Just hit C on your keyboard to sample these colors, and we'll start filling this with color IDs. So for example, I'm just looking at my reference here. Let's keep this simple for our brains. I'm going to tap C here. I'm going to hold down Alt, and we're going to do Control Alt F, which is my hotkey for a color fill object. So I can just go through here. I'm going to fill these with pure red. Again, we're just looking for material IDs. And then this is all going to be pure red, and this is going to be pure red. And this is, so if I was to sculpt this and it's all one object, then you would have a really hard time, or at least it'd be really tedious to have to go through and make, you know, paint the areas where it's red. However, if you model with everything separate, it's really easy. And that's all I got to say about that. Let's go down here to gray. Let's see to sample this. I'm going to say U. Again, these don't have to be the color I'm going for. I'm not really poly painting this for like creature skin or anything. I'm going through here and just assigning different materials to these different colors that we're doing. Okay, let's get you. And then for our laces, I can, it's technically it's black, but it's a different material. Like this is leather, and then this is leather, and then this is like cloth. So I'm going to give this, you know, we'll just make it pink. I know they'll be black eventually, but laces, we're just going to set to that color there. White can be, let's do light blue for that, I suppose. Control Alt F, Alt F. And now it's white leather, which is different from white rubber. So I'm going to make this green. So this will be white rubber, and then red rubber is going to be different. So make that yellow. And then these stitches might be a different material, so we'll just make these orange. I'm just Alt tapping on the subtool, and then Control Alt F. There we go. Oh, and before we head out of here, let's go into our Z plugin like I was talking earlier, Clean Tool Utility, Dynamic Subdivision to Real Geometry, just in case I have something like these stitches that are set to dynamic only. I want it to be real geometry because we're going to bake this high res off. Then we want to make sure we run that script or go through manually and just turn that off. And then this one here, it doesn't really matter. Let's make this make it so it's obvious for everybody. Blue. Okay, so I think that's everything. If I go through here and I like hit C for black or white, you'll see, oh, did miss something back here, so that should be red. So I'm going to C to sample, Alt Tab, Control Alt F. So now we have our material IDs all set up. If you want to, we'll save this out as like Jordan's bake file. And then now we're good to go. So I'm going to go all the way up here. We're going to turn off our original blob mesh and then turn off our star because we don't need to export that. And then we want to export this as our high res, right? I'm just going to keep it. You know what? One more thing we need to do just to make our lives easier. Let's go back in here. I'm going to put in a little plug. Let's go in here to just a sphere. It's fine. Just drop that on there. We're going to say split mass points, and I'm going to make this a different color so we can see it. This hot pink. And I'm going to, this is another thing too I would do. I don't necessarily need this for the bake file, but when we go into game res this, quote unquote, and I'm not going to do a real game res because boy, that'd be the most boring thing in the world. But I'm going to just plug this top. It doesn't have to be that tall, but essentially there's a lot of stuff going on inside of here that I did not work through to make sure that it's a water airtight and any of that stuff. So I will just kind of put a plug in there. Okay. And then you know what? Oh, this is bothering me. I didn't realize Okay. So we have all of this here, and we'll move this down. There we go. So now we've got our high res with our material IDs, and we're good to go. So, and a lot of these stitches too, like I was talking about, you could do your stitches in here, you could frame your mesh with stitches, or do your stitches in the external program, which is what we're going to do. We'll go in here and we'll say, again, save as, we'll make this our bake file. And actually, subdivide that a couple times. All right. Now, let's go in here to export, and we're just going to drop this into a folder, new folder, let's call it bake. And here, it's not going to be an OBJ, it's going to be an FBX. you know, how fancy should we get with this? I'm just going to do one object. I don't feel like getting fancy. If you want to get fancier, it's not fancy. It's just more steps that gives you a slightly more controlled output. But again, I'm not just totally concerned about that. So here, let's go to created playlists, please. A bunch of different ways. If you want to do quick and dirty, speed modeling and texturing is where we make this rifle and then decimate it down and bake maps. There's the sci-fi weapon pistol series that does that. There's a couple in here. There's the Houdini auto game res stuff that's all in here if you want to follow along, but this is probably, it's a copy link address. The sci-fi weapon pistol series is essentially what we'd be doing for this one. Another thing to consider too is like if I'm going to just export this file right now, the FBX is going to export all of this. And if you're doing like _high, _low, you know, you can merge things together. Like if we wanted to do bake the laces separately from the object, we could certainly do that. In our case, I'm going to do this super ugly. I apologize. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to go in here to say merge visible. And that's going to give us this result. So we got a 2 million polygon mesh, which you could take that into a program and render. It's not that crazy, but there's no UVs on it, and there's a couple hitches that'll show up. So what we're going to do is we're just going to call this. You don't even need to do high and low. We're just doing one object. So, but just for the hell of it, go ahead and export this onto Jordan's Bake. We're not doing an OBJ, although in this case we could because it's just one object. We'll do FBX, although OBJs might do some weird stuff with your polygroups. Jordan's high FBX is fine, safe. And we'll let that export. Smooth normals, visible or selected in this case would work fine. And we'll get this out of here, and then we'll do a quick, super gross game res. You know what? You could use Cinema 4D or Maya or Blender, whatever you want, if you need to do any extra work. We'll hop into Maya real quick because that's where I've been lately. ZBrush. Some undo history entries will be auto-deleted in order to preserve system memory, and then the history should be reduced. Any way to stop this? More RAM, maybe. Yeah, because I mean, if you're storing a lot of, you know how we were doing earlier, like control tapping points in history to store them, or morph targets, or, you know, 10,000 undo histories on a 60 million polygon object, those are really big files. In order to keep that workable, you know, depending on your system, it has to make some concessions. So, and instead of like an undo history, I mean, if you want to do an undo playback of what you're creating, I would save incremental files. I'd just do like a file save with making sure that undo history is on when you say it's going to be a giant file, but like just doing that incrementally would probably be the best way to go. So you don't have to be like, hey, I'm working on 120 million polygon mesh and I want 1 million undos. Ugh, you're asking a lot for any program. Yeah, I'm not sure how to stop that other than more RAM, I suppose. I think that's the answer. Cool. Yeah, make your Frankenstein. I need to make a Frankenstein. That's a fun one. Program you recommend for texturing a game character. Substance 3D. Adobe, what do they call it now? Adobe 3D Substance Painter. Substance Designer is good for some things for material setup, and then Quixel Suite, Photoshop, Mari. I think those are the ones. Those are all good. How many years did it take you to get so good? Oh, I'm not good. It's smoke and mirrors mostly. I wish I was good. But I've been doing this for a long time. So if you're just starting out in ZBrush and you're like, well, when am I going to get? I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years. 15 years more like it. But what is a color pick strip? Plugin. Okay, that strip is not a plugin. It's just a tool, but you can have it. Let me go to my Google Drive real quick, and we'll look for... What do we call this? It was color something or other. Simple color swatches, ZBrush. Okay. Oh, come on. Sorry. I got so much stuff on here. Simple color swatches, Z tool. I'm gonna copy. Let's see. Share. Anyone with a link can view. Copy link here. Here, you can download it right here. And then where I put that is so I can have it available to me in my tool menu. simple color swatches. Throw that in your ZBrush 2022 Z tools. You're going to see right in here, simple color swatches Z tool. If you throw it in there, whenever you hit your comma key, it'll be under your tool menu. You just double click it and throw it in your scene. Cool. Yeah, we did a little bit of work. Cool. You can buy them. I think I don't know that I mean, these were like $2,000 on eBay in this condition, so it might be a little expensive to buy these in particular, but oh yeah, Marmoset, duh. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry. Body paint, another one. Or just any 3D program too, if you want to texture and Max Maya, Moto, Blender, Cinema 4D, for sure. They're all good. Okay, so we got this, and we got this exported, so now we need to make our game res. So if I'm being really lazy, what I would do is I would go through here. Let's turn off our polypaint because we don't need that anymore for game res purposes. You can go through here and create a voxelized envelope, which in ZBrush terms is just creating a Dynamesh mesh. And when you Dynamesh something, it's going to just turn this all into one mesh. Make it a little squirrely in these areas. We can just smooth this out. So now essentially we have an envelope. The lower your resolution is, the bigger the voxels will be, let's say, and that'll start closing more of these gaps. So you'll get less of like these little areas. And you can go through here, like say your move brush with backface masking turned on, underneath brush auto masking, backface masking. You can go through here and just kind of pull these things down. Same thing for 3D printing. You know, you can even, another cool thing for 3D printing is you can go mask by, you can set your camera, and then you can do mask by, this is an oldie. This is one of those hidden kind of features maybe. God, what is it? Is it Polypaint? I thought you could, I'm pretty sure you could mask by it, but maybe it's under Polygroup or Polypaint. From Draft, and you can actually set your camera. So if you just go on my YouTube channel or just Google and then say ZBrush from Draft, and then setting up your draft angle, so you can go through and get rid of these things here. So it just, you know, pull straight back. Now in our case, you know, if this was a real mesh, if this was a real production mesh, the laces I do separate, obviously. But if you're 3D printing this, or you're just doing a really nasty job like I am, you can go through and just kind of close up these gaps as part of your low res process. It's going to give you a kind of a weird, nasty bake, but again, it's on the underside of the laces, so who cares? I probably will care later when I'm like, why does this look so ugly and terrible? But me, right now, I don't care that much. So here's our game res, right? It's not real low. So at this point, we could ZRemesh or we could decimate. I'm gonna close this up too. And also, you should do this on your high res. I'm doing it on my low res, but make sure your high res is in good shape enough to bake, right? Let's drop this down a little bit more. Again, I'm looking for a looser envelope. That's going to capture our big details. I don't need it to capture like any minute stuff. Just the overall volumes is what I'm looking for. And then this is going to be gross. Just bear with me. Z plugin. So if you were doing rocks, if you had like photogrammetry rocks or a statue or whatever, and you just needed to get a game res, this is what I would do. For a shoe, this isn't necessarily what I would do, especially if you're going to like animate it. But we're going to treat this as a static mesh. So we're going to go in here to Z plugin, decimation master, preprocess current. And then we're going to say polygons, let's say maybe 10K decimate. And once you've preprocessed once, you don't need to preprocess again. So this is capturing what we need it to capture. And we can clean up any weird things. In fact, you're probably going to run into some nasty issues up in here with folded geometry and stuff. But again, we'll clean that up in just a second. So yeah, that could work. And again, you don't need to pre-process again. So if you want to see what 5K would look like, you can decimate that down to 5K, or you can go up, say 15K is maybe a little better. Just type in 15 and put that in there. I think this will be fine. So let's go in here to, let's call this low. And again, this is just one object. We don't need to do low and high, but why not? Okay, we have our object here. We're going to export this as Jordan's low. That should go really fast. Okay. And then again, hop into your program of choice. You can do it in ZBrush too. You can go into Z plugin, UV master, and just try and UV this thing. It'll probably do decent. In fact, we can just try. Nothing wrong with that. Let's go in here to Z plugin. And if you want to UV master based on, let's do this. UV master Symmetry off, polygroups on. Let's work on clone, just in case. Not totally necessary, but for one object. And let's try this. Let's do group by normals and see if it picks up anything that might need to be its own polygroup here. Because yeah, these things are gonna be problematic for sure. We're gonna have to clean that up. Damn, I should have been more careful. You know what? We can do it. Just give me a second. Let's go ahead and delete this. We don't need that clone anymore. Here's our Jordans. Let's go back through here. I'm gonna hold down Shift. I'm gonna go in here to Sculptures Pro. I'm just gonna chew away some of these problematic areas. Just holding down Shift and making a bigger brush size here. And the reason I'm using Sculptures Pro is it's actually going in and like deleting geometry. If you just smooth, it's just going to smooth out the wonky geometry. Sculptures Pro will actually eat away at those really nasty, and then you can just control drag to re-Dynamesh and fill holes. Sorry, I changed my mask accidentally. And if you were trying to make this thing watertight, a way to test this, and you know what, let's be really just gross. And again, this is so fast and dirty, please don't make production models like this, but for live streams, it's how I get things done. If you want to test water tightness, you can go in here and you can say append a cube. Here, we'll set this to subtractive, and we'll BTR, scale it out, turn on my Boolean so we can go through here, and this is like a diagnostic tool, kind of. You just go through here and be like, let me checking. Oh, we have a hole somewhere, you know. So all of that's going to get captured in our Dynamesh. So this back here is okay, not great, but somewhere in here is allowing air to get in, and we don't want to really necessarily capture all that. So that's where you go through and you look for those little problem areas. So here we can turn this off, and then we'll go back in here, and it looks like this right here is maybe our culprit. So we'll go through here and we'll inflate this, re-Dynamesh, turn this one back on with live Boolean, and then push this back through. We got to turn the eyeball on for live Boolean, sorry. So that closes off, and this opens up. So right here, back just underneath that, there's something in there. So let's turn this off. So right in here is something weird happening. And this is this is all sealed up. Those I don't care too much about. Yeah, what is causing that? Oh, maybe it's coming in from the other side, actually. So all of this. Oh. And here, let's try this. Let's grab this one here. Drop the resolution even lower. You know what? I'm just going to see. Okay. That's a little too low. That's a little too low. So 2440. It's doing the job. Trying to see how low I can go and still have it cap everything for me. Okay, so 80, somewhere between 88. Let's see if we can drop this down to like 70. 60. There we go. That's capped everything for me. Still maintains my volumes enough? Yeah, I think so. Any weird geometry we need to eat away. And even at this point too, if you wanted to, you could project back to your high res. You could store those in history, or you could do project all. Good enough. So let's just make this down. So we'll say preprocess current. And we'll say, you know, again, just drop this down like 5K. Not too shabby. So we'll say that's Jordan's low, delete, live Boolean, rename, export. There we go. So now with this one, we could say UV master, work on clone, polygroups on, and we could tell it, you know, like, hey, go ahead and say these, put on one island, and gosh, I wonder if it would just do what I needed to do. I'll see how it goes. So polygroup's on. We'll go ahead and say, oops, unwrap and flatten. There might be, okay, let's just say unflatten, copy UVs. We'll go back to our original here. We'll say paste UVs. I'm going to do a quick texture create, texture map, create from UV check, no overlapping. Okay, you know that actually kind of works. So good enough. So now we'll export this. Oops, I may have messed that up. These are my original Jordans? Oh. I wonder why I renamed it again. So now I'll just export this with those UVs. Jordan's Law. And in fact, since we've done it in ZBrush, and when we go to export this, we're just saying, hey, smooth my normals on this. We don't even need to go into another program. So let's hop into Painter. Okay, let me get caught up here. Oh, Mudbox. That's another one. Would you rather add organic deform on high poly or making a perfect mesh than adding these deformations on low? It kind of depends. If it's not going to, like, we'll just walk through this. So file, new. Let's go ahead and select our mesh. So we are streaming in Jordan land, bake. Here's our low. And then we don't need to auto, I mean, you could auto unwrap too. So this will actually do your UVs for you, but we did them in ZBrush. So I think this will work. So we'll say okay. And then underneath texture settings, we're going to say bake mesh maps. So we're going to say, let's do 2048. And we'll add our high res here. And just a couple things we need to change. Matching name, this kind of stuff. If you want to match by mesh name, you can change it in here if you have a bunch of highs and lows, but we don't. Material ID, we're going to switch from material color to vertex color. I think that's all we need to do. So we'll go ahead and bake here. Bake on a high res. Oh yes, we're just baking on a decimated mesh. Yes. Yeah, when we go, actually, if you're into 3D printing, we do a little bit more of that X-ray stuff. So I do have 3D printing playlist, don't I? Lychee Slicer. That's a one. And this one actually has a really fun kind of X-ray mode for your 3D prints, and it has scale stuff. So that's the one that pops to mind when I think of that. Let me get some more coffee. Oh, so that indicator I was looking for is essentially as you're going through the layers of your mesh, you're looking for a little hole that expands into a cavernous volume. So if you can find where that little hole is happening and allowing air to get in and, you know, finding those holes, it's kind of a pain. There may be a better way to go about that, honestly. But here's our low res mesh with our high res baked, and you know what? It looks fine, right? Now, would I put this in my portfolio with my wires? No. Would I show my UVs? No. But for our purposes, I think it's okay. So let's go over here. If we want to look through some materials, I'm going to go to, oh, this one too, this resources updater. If you all aren't in tune with my YouTube channel, we just did a recent video on this one, which was your no UV look dev for concept. So you can just have a 3D model of, don't even have to worry about UVs. It bakes it to a plane with displacement. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do. If you're sending it over from ZBrush, this little button over here is how to, so basically here's a dog and it's literally just baked to a plane in Substance. You don't need to worry about UVs. You can just apply your materials in your, oh, that's great, Mike. Did I just upload a YouTube video with a, what the hell? Or is it just turning, okay, that was weird. Huh, sorry about that. Boy, my quality, my QA team is fired. And that would be me, unfortunately. So yeah, you can bake your object to a plane, and then you can add shadows and colors and stuff in Substance Painter, and it's actually pretty cool. I just hope that the actual, okay, it did. Weird. Anyway, check that out if you want something cool to look at. Okay, so we're in here, and we're going to be applying leather. So if we want to go through here and grab some leather, we can go browse some 3D assets in the marketplace. And we could look under materials. There's 8,300 materials in here, and if we're in materials, we're like, hey, you know what? We can go through and look at cloth, I think, or fabric. And you also do searches, so if you just want to look at leather or worn leather or whatever type of leather you want to get. My leather's pretty worn, so I wonder if I can do elephant skin worn leather, just like some really nasty cracked leather. We'll see if we can find some in here that'll work. I think I have some already, but just for demonstration purposes, let me kill that video. Anything? Anybody see anything? I mean, there's already worn leather inside the program, so I'm not too worried about it. And of course, you can make your own if you're really into doing work. Boy. A lot of leather, huh? I think we're okay. So anyway, you could go through here, and let's just grab one while we're in here. What's a cool, actually, laces, leather. Oh, you know what? We do need, let's see. We do need leather with holes in it. And of course we can make our own, but like I said, who wants to do work? So if there is a leather with that already built in, we could use that to our advantage. I don't know what the exact word would be for it, but essentially that leather you see on like car seats and stuff that has little holes incrementally. Again, we can just add it. It's not a big deal. We can use it for the front of the shoe. Anyway, let's just grab something. What's a cool... Wait, is it updating at all? All right, I don't have a search term. I want to look at ground, and you're just showing me leather. Close it down. Yeah, this thing is not updating at all. All formats, all techniques, ground. Jeez. Okay. All right, close that. I don't know what this is doing. Anyway, you could just literally add those materials and I'll throw it in here for you. Let's do a search. So we have two. We have Smart Materials, which has a bunch of things packed in. So we can look in here for leather, and then also in your regular materials, we can look for leather. Boy, it's taking a long time for these things to generate. Is there something wrong? I need to restart my computer or something. Difference between sculpting in ZBrush and Blender, Mudbox and ZBrush. Any sculpting program is going to be a little bit different. ZBrush is certainly different than most others, but I like it. I like different. Okay, so these are worn and cracked. Let's see if we got any smart materials. I want to say like, and we can make varying degrees of worn and cracked as well. And you can make these things from scratch. Let's try this one. So here's leatherette damaged. I'm going to throw this. Actually, leather stylized might even, let's just try this one. So anyway, we have layers in here, and I'm just going to drag this over. And now we have leather on our shoe. And so we need to designate where this leather is going to go. So we'll make this our red leather. And we'll say right click, and we'll add a massive color selection, pick color, and wherever it's red, we want this one to go. And then we're going to go into our settings here, and we're going to say leather. Find out where the color's coming from, which is looks like this leather material, and I can just sample from my reference photographs that red. So now we have red leather, and let's see what that wear looks like. So here's leather damages. That's just kind of adding dirt, really. There's nothing a whole lot going there. Let's see if we got anything else. Leather sofa. Let's try leather stylized. We'll try this on our white. And I don't, some materials do have specific dirt patterns, but usually dirt just falls on an object, right? Unless there's a material that repels dirt somehow. So dirt I usually don't like packed in. I like that to be more of a global thing. But anyway, so we have our base color here. I'm going to change this base color again. We're just going to color select from here. And then through here we have some noise, a little bit of a darker, again, kind of dirt built in. If you don't want it, just get rid of it. A little curvature, again, just adding a little dirt look, it looks like. So again, here, add massive color selection, pick, and we'll just say wherever that is. That'll be our white leather. And then again, our base color, I'm going to make this a little less saturated. And then also that base noise is okay, but I'm going to go in here to this and just turn that down just a tiny bit. Okay, so again, I'm not totally sold on this one, although this one's not terrible. It's just, I think that height's a little much. So let's go down here. Here's the height range we can change. You can also just go in here to your height and just drop this down. So here on the leather itself, we can drop this amount of dodge, although this one isn't holding the height. So leather damages, let's see. You know what, we can just do it here. Overall for this entire layer, we can just say, hey, don't need that much detail. Now if we have one that we like say leather white, we'll say Control D to duplicate this. We'll call this leather black. And on the color selection, we'll just update this, kill that, and we'll say you go here. And of course, leather black needs to be, let's go back to our base color, and our base color, we're going to switch to sample black leather. Now, these are kind of factory fresh-ish, but we'll go ahead and finish this out. Let's go in here to rubber. I don't know why. Usually this is way, way faster. I don't know what's going on. Try not to crunch in your ear. Vulcanized rubber raw, that's fine. So let's throw this on top. Or if you want this to be just kind of underneath everything, we can just drop this all the way down to the bottom. This can be just kind of sitting underneath. So sometimes it's nice to have a base layer that's a catch-all. And normally I would make this like a dark base layer. So since this rubber unfortunately is white, I probably wouldn't put this down at the bottom. I want something dark down there. So with this one, you can put it in a folder. I'm not going to do anything fancy with it. So we're just going to go in here, mask color selection, pick color. We'll say this goes on here. And of course, this base color should be something whitish. Again, this is factory fresh now. We'll go in and we'll ding it up in just a second. Kind of the same thing for the stitches. Here. Orange, nope. Here, and while we're working, let's go back into our texture settings. What are we working at? What resolution? Because we baked it to 2048, where our document resolution is 2048, so that's about right. You could bake it 4K and then work in 2K and then export at 4K if you wanted to. It's a pretty flexible system. You could even do a new, once you're done with this, you can go back, redo your low res completely, redo the UVs completely, bring this in, just go in here to File, Edit, Project Configuration, just load up your new object and it'll reapply all your materials and all your brush strokes right back onto your object. So again, very flexible system. Very fun, very rad. Cloth. Material. God, why is this acting so weird? Fabric. And then, let's see, we just need a base fabric is fine. Although, if you can find the exact fabric weave that your shoelaces might have, feel free. There's some very particular things you can get. I think knit probably isn't what I'm looking for, maybe. Although, I don't know. It's kind of got a big weave on it. So maybe, I'll try this. So we'll go through here. And we'll say, knitted sweater is not what we're looking for. Oh, yeah, let's try it. Let's go to mask with color selection, pick color. So all our laces here. And then for this one, it's a little too big. So we're going to go into our tiling and we'll increase that a little bit. So now we've got our little tiling cloth here. And this is going to be based on our UVs. You could even do triplanar if you wanted to and just disregard UVs if you got some weird seams going on. Which the way we UV'd it, I think will be okay. If we auto UV'd this, then seams might be an issue. So here, tiling, like so, and then we'll go back into this and we'll say fabric color top is darker, and then fabric color bottom is also probably pretty dark. There we go. What else? Okay, we got that tag up there. Now this has text on it. This type of thing, and like the back, like you would have to go in and like you could paint on these if you go in here to 2D only. You know, if you can find the tag laid out flat and you can just go through, or you could UV it separately and then make it UV perfectly so you can easily apply like text or colors to that or whatever you want. But here you can see just the UV'd object, and it'd be a pain. So in this case, if you did it like this badly, you'd be in 3D and then you could just go in and manually paint. But I think we're okay. So for this void material, like I said, we're just going to have something sitting down at the bottom. We'll just do a fill layer. I'll put this down here and we'll say you are going to be very dark and you are going to be not metallic and fairly rough too. So that'll just be, again, just a filler. This is just a base. Okay, so that cloth, I'm just going to grab fabric soft, knit align, denim, baseball hat. Doesn't need to be rough, it just needs to be, or anything fancy, just an indication. Suit, and I don't want a ton of, ooh, soft denim looks nice. This is fine. You, add mask with color selection, pick you, and then we're going to really, so on the base here, what properties do we have? Not much, huh? Height range, we can say not a whole lot of height. And then as far as, God, what am I looking for here? Height, AO, no. No. Boy, this doesn't have anything in it. Ugh, okay, you know, kill that. Let's just add a fill layer here. We're going to say you are only going to go on add mask with color selection. We're going to pick you. Now on here, we want the base color to be, again, we'll just sample and use that as our starting point here. Something reddish, perfect. Now the roughness is going to be pretty rough, so we want it super shiny. We want it clothy rough. And then as far as a weave pattern goes, maybe we can go in here for the height, and let's just do a search for weave and let these fill in. There we go. Yeah, we want something. Let's try this one. So I'm just going to drop this into our height here, and then we'll take, you know, we'll just do the tiling for everything since we're just really using this for the height. So we'll just kind of tile some height on there, and then for the height, histogram position, we can dial in. Well, here's the overall pattern too. So how much tiling, disorder, invert, and then for the overall height on this layer, we'll just drop in here to height, and then we'll say, just drop this down. We don't want to overpowering, just little touch. And then back here, we'll go to base color. And then again, for this height, we'll put this back in the middle. Sorry about that. And again, just a little hint, and then actually maybe tile it up even more. I don't know. Okay, so, okay, now as far as like wearing this up, I still feel like leather, I still feel like I've got a cracked leather in here. This should work really well. I'm trying to remember, I can't say what I was working on, but I was doing a very cracked leather thing, and it was great, and I don't remember what I did. Let's call this tag laces, and I'm just going to drag leather worn up at the top here. I'm going to give this a shot. Color, pick you, and do you have just like serious wear, base color? And I wish there site was working better. Okay, you know what? We're just gonna do this manually. Okay, you get killed. So we have actually the stuff that's really worn is this black leather here. So what we're going to do is I think what we can do is, so this will be leather black, and we're going to say duplicate this off, and let's call this worn. And this thing all has a color selection on it, but I'm going to do an overall. Let's go back here to base color, and we're going to switch this to just a lighter version of this. Now we do have a color selection, so on top of this color selection, we're going to do add a generator, and on this generator, we're going to set this to multiply, and in this generator, let's do a I don't know, we'll just try some stuff. So we're doing metal edge wear, but we can change these parameters, and you can also, if you wanted to, instead of doing that, you could go through here like mask builder and mask editor and get what you want. I think this will give us basically what we need. So as we go through here and crank up this wear level, you're going to see it's kind of wearing back through. So we're kind of getting that kind of look. The only thing is it's kind of the opposite. So this wants to wear the edges. So we'll go ahead and invert this. And so now when we start wearing this, it'll start just kind of wearing from the middle out, as opposed to wearing the edges down. And then on here, you know, I'm going to keep this fairly benign. And on top of this, let's do add a paint, and then we're going to go through here, and then with black, since I don't see the Nike swoosh being that worn, you can actually go through here. Let's go into brush and say dirt, and we'll say dirt 2, and we'll just go through here, and we'll just kind of use dirt to kind of knock this back a little bit, so we can kind of direct this a little bit more, or at least have a little more hand. And you know, let's go in here and we'll increase that contrast, so we're getting a little bit more punchy with our details here. Yo, like so. So just quick and dirty, and then also, you know, dirt might not be. Let's see. There is leather on here. So for those wrinkles, you can go through. And let's turn on X. So if you hit X, it'll go between black and white. So now we're painting in here. So now you can actually go through and just kind of tap in leather. However, since this is set to multiply and we're painting with white, it's going to show up. So let's do another paint layer. And we want to, let's see if I set this to, let me see what we're doing here. So as I'm painting white, oh, it's set to screen. Maybe. So this will only take away, oh, think, man, is that linear add? We may have to do another thing for that. I'm not quite sure. Okay, so we're painting in here, and we want to, you know what, let's do this on the red, because the red doesn't have a ton of scratches. It just has little touches. So let's go through here. And we got leather black, leather white, red leather. So we're going to take this red leather. I'm just going to, again, I could be a little more contained with this, but I'm just doing quick and dirty. So we're going to go in here to leather. I'm going to take this. You know what we're going to do? We're going to make this like a sun, like a kind of a faded. So we're going to say we're a little less saturated and maybe a tiny bit lighter, like so. And then we're going to say all this leather is set to only be in the red areas, which is totally fine. But on top of this, we'll do another generator. Again, we'll do metal edge wear, inverted with the wear. And then we can go through here and do a paint, and then X, and we can just get rid of some of this. So again, just little touches of kind of worn leather. And again, this is where you wanted your storytelling, where it's like, okay, where the laces are constantly getting adjusted, there's going to be more wear and tear, where dirt's going to kind of fall, and all that again, that storytelling stuff you're doing. And also we could add a little bit of height over here, I think. So on this leather black worn, let's see if we can go in here and say base noise curvature, AO cavity. Let's go in here, and we do have height turned on, so we just take this, we can kind of maybe push this down just a tiny bit. Okay, and then you can also just manually go in there and scuff, which, you know what? I think I'm going to do this copy that we did. I'm going to do that. So we're going to say metal edge wear, but instead we're going to say really just grab my edges. And I'm also going to turn down that grunge amount down to 0. So really I'm just kind of wearing down. So again, that faded lighter version of this is what we're dialing in. So we're just adding wear to the edges here. And then you can go back into your properties for this and you can say, what's this fill layer doing? I don't know. Go back into the properties here and you can say, oh, I want to make this more rough, you know, or less rough or more shiny, but probably rough is your ideal. And then overall dirt, like again, global dirt that we'd be looking for would be, let's do a fill layer. Actually, I think I've already got one set up. It's a little bit easier, a little bit faster. We'll say dirt. I got a simple dirt in here for my simple layer. Rough, 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 dirty. How do I not have, I don't want to have to make this again. Okay. Or it may just not be, I don't know. This thing is being weird. I'm not quite sure why. Okay, let's do it. So we have a fill layer. On this fill layer, we're going to do a fill. And in this fill, we're going to go in here with dirt selected in my patterns here. And we're just going to choose dirt. This one's fine. We're going to drop this right into our base color. And so now we have that kind of dirt. So we're going to go through here. And on top of this, we're going to say add a filter. And on this filter, we're going to do a gradient. And that means, and you can add more quantity. So we have 3, which means black, gray, and white. Of course, you can add more. So in the black values, we're going to pipe in kind of a dark brown here. And then in our gray values, we can sample that. We can kind of use that as a starting point. We're going to say, oh, maybe a little more red, a little less saturated. And then for our third one, again, oops, we can say start here, and then we'll say maybe a little more yellow, something like this. So this will be kind of our mottled dirt look. And then as far as our fill goes, let's go down here. Dirt's pretty rough. It's not super shiny unless it's muddy, right? So we'll just say it's kind of a rough mud. And on top of all this, instead of going through these and changing all these colors as needed, I can just on top of this say add a filter. And we're going to say a hue set. So now I can change all those colors at the same time. So if I ever want to change the overall hue or the overall saturation, like dumb this down and maybe lighten it up a bit, that'll be our new dirt. And then this is going to be right click. Oh, you know where it is. Stupid. It's right in here. Simple dirt. So you can just save this, anything you stack, you can put it in a group. So like this one, just hit Control G. You can put more stuff in here. You can call this whatever, and then right click this and say create smart material, and then it'll just be in here. But we did it. So let's go ahead and take this out of that group, and we'll say whatever, deleted simple dirt, add a black mask. In this black mask, we'll say add a generator. And in this generator, we'll say it is dirt. And then wherever, so if I alt tap this mask, you can see it's pulling from your ambient occlusion, your world space, all this stuff. Again, like if you wanted to do like a sun bleach from the top down, I'll show you how to do that in a second. But that's what's controlling this. So now we can go through here and add more or less dirt. So we'll say dirt level down a little bit. These are pretty grungy ass shoes, at least for my reference here. Now, those holes I was talking about, these little things punched in here, it doesn't go into the tongue, so we might have to do this in 2 pieces, but we'll get to that in a second. So here, I'm going to drop this down, this effect down just a bit, just to kind of drop the opacity down. And now we've got these, we've got the rubber on the side. There is a little bit of texture along here that I forgot about. So let's go back to our white, leather white in here. And inside of here, I'm going to say add a fill layer. And on this fill layer, I just want it to affect the height. So I'm going to turn off all the channels except for height. And in here, let's look for, God, I don't even know what to look for this. Is it kind of a cells thing? Is it kind of a, it's just a very small repeating pattern that I didn't want to do in ZBrush because I want a little bit more control, so we're doing it in here. It's kind of irregular, and these are all tiling, which is good news. It's not that regular. I guess it is maybe kind of a cells. I don't know, we'll try this. So we'll drop, so this fill layer just has height information. We're just going to drop it in here. Oops, it's not in the white leather. It's in the white rubber vulcanized. Oh, right. Crap. So we're going to go in here. We're going to call this white rubber. Yes. Wait, did it already have a folder? Am I losing my mind? Let's try this. Let's say add a black mask. I'm going to take this mask and I'm going to say copy mask, and I'm going to say paste into mask, and then this mask we can just get rid of. We can say remove mask. So now that should all go in that area here. And is this even part of this? Yes. And then now we got to go find this fill layer, which is in here. So now it's going to be confined to this. So I'm going to go through here. I'm going to change that tiling quite a bit, and then also the height. Here we'll just dumb this down quite a bit. Yeah, it's kind of a pebbly thing. And it actually, looking at this, it doesn't go up here. So on this, we'll call this, I'm going to right click this, and we're going to say add a white mask. And then on here, we'll add a paint. And then we'll go back to our brush. We'll just choose simple, basic hard. And then we're going to paint black where we don't want this, right? Yes, that seems to be working. Okay. If we want to see what we're doing, again, we can hold down Alt and go on here, and you can kind of see what mask we're painting. But essentially, we're just removing the pebbling from here. If I would have had a material ID for this, I could have, but it was all just one solid piece. So a little bit of manual labor never hurt anybody. Well, that's not true. But in 3D, that's probably true unless you're getting carpal tunnel. Okay, so now we can talk about stitches. So let's go up here and let's add another fill layer, and we'll call this just simple stitches. Let's go back to our brush, and in here, stitch, yes. And we'll do stitches, stitches 1, I think, or stitches this one. So now I'm going to say add, so this is just a fill layer with just white, which is fine for now. We're going to add a black mask, and on this black mask, we're going to add a paint so we can, if we need to, we can modify this. So now we can go through here and start painting, only we want to paint with a stitch brush. And I think, oh man, did I mess this up? I feel like, yeah, I feel like I messed it up. Whenever I touch these things that have that little icon, it messes things up. So I'm going to do a quick file, save as. I think that's the case. Rendered streaming, we're streaming here, and we'll just call this here. And this will give me an opportunity to look over there real quick. So we're going to go back into Substance, and we'll, okay. Again, if I miss anything, I apologize. There's a ton of stuff over here. Gotcha. Booleans. ZBrush mesh having triangles. Not sure why that would happen. Because yeah, ZBrush only doesn't have the ability to do n-gons. So okay, open recent Jordans. This is a 2080 Ti on this machine. Cool. Yeah, I don't know why that video, the video is like 1 minute long and it had black at the end. It's perforated. Yes, thank you. That's what I was looking for. Now, this thing isn't working at all. Like, it's just not doing anything. Creative Cloud Desktop. Can I, hold on. Substance Painter. Like, I wish I could just reboot this so that it actually searches, but it's just not working at all. Plugins, 3D. Okay, it's back. There we go. Thank you. Yes, that's what I was looking for. Thank you, H+I. So this is all perforated. Let's see, cloth. Yeah, so something like this, calf skin perforated. So if I, okay, so this has different settings you can change, blah, blah, blah. They're square, but I bet we could probably change that. Suede perforated hexagon, perforated, oh, maybe not. If it says square, maybe that's not the case. Circle. Yeah, I don't want perforated squares necessarily. And you would think they would build in the shape to that, because that seems like an easy thing to build in. But the fact they're calling out the actual shape makes me think that they didn't. Suede, perforated hexagon, perforated dots. There we go. So I want to say send this to Substance Painter. So now this is perforated suede. And there it is. So if I want to apply this to my object, I can go in here and I can say apply to my object. And then it's got holes in it. Now, if we wanted those holes to actually show up, like you can see through them, you'd have to go in here to your texture settings and say add a channel for opacity. Am I missing it here? Oh, you know what? We have to change our shader because it doesn't support it. So over here we have metal roughness. Or an ASM metal rough. PBR metal rough with alpha blending is what we want. And then with this now, we can go back to our texture settings. And we can say add a channel for opacity. And then now that we've done that, we actually have these things that are poked through. So we can go through with this object and we could say what suede color do we want? How much tiling do we want? We may be able to do that in here. Perforated dots. We can change the pattern scale. Change these. The offset. If you want them offset or not. Cool. Definition, relief intensity. So a lot of stuff you can do on here. And then again, for the tiling, we can just dial that in. So now we can actually see through our object where those perforations are. And then, you know, we can go in here and say, turn on shadows. Or I wonder if this will work. Let's hop into IRay real quick. We'll let that warm up. Cool. Thank you, Ben. This is Substance Painter. Okay. Okay, so we have our perforated suede in here. Let's go into, what setting would that be? Clear color. Let's get rid of that background real quick. And, oh, you know what? Let's take that ground up. There we go. Huh. That looks a little bit weird to me. Anyway, that's what you would do for like the perforated stuff we were talking about. So we'll hop out of there and we'll turn off shadows while we're working. Way up here. And we don't need this weight anymore. And in fact, I'm going to go back to, we don't even need with alpha blending. We just need PBR metal rough. I don't know what I was working in earlier for some reason. Okay, back to our layers here. We have suede. There we go. So now we could do it manually. Yeah, why not? Let's just do a manual real quick. So we're going to go in here, and on this one, we're going to say dots, and we're going to, yeah, let's do Control G to group this. And I'm going to say, give me just this thing right here. So I want to maintain this area. And in fact, we'll even add a paint so we can modify this. So on this dots here, let's go into Base color, and I'm going to go out of this. We're going to go into our alpha. I mean, we could literally just manually paint dots if we wanted to. Let me see if we got circle dots that are offset with that tile. Actually, you know what? Oh, I'm looking for this, aren't I? Okay, so we have hexagons, tile generator, circles. I think circles will work. So I'm going to, although they're a little more spaced out than that. Let's try it. Let's drop this into our base color here, and then we'll crank that tiling up, and then we can even crank it up even more with the tiling overall. And then let's see what parameters we have. So I want to make these dots. There we go. So that's essentially what I'm looking for, is just dots on my object, right? I wonder if I could invert this. Yes. And we can tile it less. And then can I make them smaller? Okay, so that's essentially what we're looking for. So now this is affecting the color. And I also want it, oh, this is a good question for myself, or for y'all. Base color, I want this exact same thing to be applied to my roughness and my height. Without having, can I copy? Oh boy, it's been a while since I've been in here. Create material preset. New material preset. Okay, so now if I go down here to my height, can I say, what do they call it? New material preset. I should probably rename that, huh? So now if I apply that, yeah, it doesn't want to do it. Okay, so, ooh, boy. I mean, I guess I can just do it manually really quick. What was it we were looking at? Circles in my height here. So parameters. 1.57 and 0.11 and 16. So 0.11. And the tiling I don't need to worry too much about because it's going to inherit that. So, okay, so now we have the height there. And I do want to change, we want to invert this height. So now the height kind of punches in a little bit. And then, yeah, that could work, but it's going all over my object, right? So we're going to say, and then, again, this should just be dots. So we're going to say this is only the color itself. I don't want it to be pure white, right? I want it to just be where the black is. So we want to get rid of the white. So for the base color, we're going to switch this to just multiply. So now just the darker values are going to be on here. And then let's go into our height and let's drop this height down. I'm playing it kind of fast and loose with what we're doing, so don't take this as gospel. And then back in our dots here, we want it to affect color. We don't need metallicity. We don't need normal. We do want height. We don't need opacity. In fact, I can get rid of that. We're not using that anymore. So under texture settings, we can just say opacity, you're gone. Back to my layers, our roughness here. Yeah, we do want roughness control. So for our roughness, this is super shiny. We want it to be pretty rough in the divots. And then also we have it set to where all this leather is, but we're going to say on this paint, we're going to set that to black, and we're going to say literally, again, just basic hard painting with black, and we'll just get rid of these areas in here. We just want it on the front there. There we go. Okay, so now we restarted this and we were doing stitches earlier. So let's, we got our dots here, simple stitches paint. We'll go back to our brush. Stitches. I think it's this one, I think. Hope it works, because this is what I want to use. We want to paint with white so we can show where, there we go, it's working better. Again, something about these things just completely borks my machine. I'm not sure exactly why. So now we have the ability to paint stitches. We can paint in a straight line too. We just hold down Shift as we go, and then I'll go ahead and add stitches there. Now these in particular are double stitches. So I think we have that capability. So we'll undo all that. Right click and we'll go into our brush properties here, and we have attributes for this. So we're going to say we want the line here, and under line properties we want the here's what's going to happen. So we want the count to be increased, so they're double, and then the spacing, we want these, we'll say kind of this far apart. Scale Y, don't want scale X very much. Scale Y, spacing, stripes, opacity, we'll turn that down to 0. We don't want stripes on this. And then spacing, and then, oh, it's way up here is where this spacing is what's controlling how many. So these are all spaced out, and then these are spaced closer together. These are pretty close. So we'll do closer together, and then down here under Y, we'll just max that out. Okay, something like this. So now we have double stitches on here. So we're going to go through here, and now we can just do double stitches. And then this is on, so this is showing this layer here, which is just white for now. And then we're painting just white where we want these stitches to go. So we'll just dial in how close we want these things to be. And then while we're painting, we have the ability, again, in ZBrush, if we were doing this, we'd frame the mesh and it'd be real geometry, or you'd be sculpting this geometry. But if you had to come back and go, I want this less or more, and then you also have to bake out the color ID for the stitches, and it'd be a whole process. So this frees us up to go through here. And again, we'll just really quickly just kind of dial in where we want these stitches to go real quick. So we'll do on our paint layer, I'm just going to hold down Shift as we kind of go through, and we're just going to put in some basic stitches through here. And I wonder if we can also do, we're doing a paint layer right now. I'm going to drop in a add color selection, so we're just only going to put stitches in the leather area, and then we'll set this at the bottom, and then our paint will set to, God, we have to do multiply for that as well. Let me think about this. We want to set this, you know what we'll do, here's what we'll do. Let's delete this out of here. So these are our simple stitches. I'm going to do a group for this. So for our stitches for a red leather, we're going to set this to a massive color selection. So that's only going to allow us to paint stitches in this area. And then on the simple stitches itself, we'll kill this and we'll add a paint for this one. So now this is going to block us to only be painting the red stitches area, and this is going to just show up here. So I think, yeah, so that'll go ahead and skip anything that's not red leather. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. I thought I'd get it. Oh, another thing too is you can go in here and you can turn on pressure profile. What am I looking for? So this lazy mouse. They even call it lazy mouse. How cute is that? Distance. Here, we'll turn this down. So that radius right there is how far out it goes. So that'll kind of smooth your stroke out. Now, of course, we have options here. So when we go in here to simple stitches, we can say, okay, first of all, this is basically the exact same color as that leather. So we can go through here, and I'm going to just do a quick, for this base property here, we can say just sample the red. And now it's shinier where it is, so we don't necessarily want that. We don't need to match the roughness, but it's rougher. And then we can go through here and we'll say, make it a little darker red here. And now there is height. You know, when stitches go on, they're stitched, so we can actually add a little bit of height. Now it's not embedded, and we can also just dial in just a tiny bit of height. That doesn't really look embedded in here, so you can go through and you can actually sculpt in Substance Painter like a little embed depth. Now what I'm going to try to do, and this will be after the fact, so basically where our stitches are going to go, we can blur that out, sink that down on another layer underneath it, and kind of make these stitches look embedded. So we'll do that again after the fact. You know, just real quick, I'm not too worried about quality here, y'all. I can just fix it in post, or I can just pick a camera angle that is the least offensive, and everybody will think like, wow, it's really good looking. And I'll be like, you should see it from the other side. That's a pro tip from me to you. So double stitches here, and then down the middle it looks like. Yep. So we're just going through and we're let me get this reference up so I can see it. So this is what we're using. So all around here, and this is an opportunity for storytelling too. Like as we're adding detail, you know, this is going to be divoted, and then there's going to be dirt and stuff that happens in certain different ways. And actually, the lazy mouse is good for these broad areas. It kind of sucks for those tight corners. So I'll go back through and we'll do those separately. So, and again, for these really broad areas, you can hold down Shift and just pop in a straight line, and then just continue that here if you can pick up where you left off. And I'm just kind of guessing. Can I match it? Ooh, almost. And this is where, if you had good UVs, that could come in handy. Because you can go and you can do your stitches on your flattened mesh, and that might actually be easier. So what I'm talking about is going into 2D only. And if you go into this view, you might have an easier time, you know, kind of doing your magic in here. Oh, let's switch our camera, our brush setting to go from alignment tangent warp to UVs. And then now we can, okay, there we go. The lazy mouse was just, there we go. So here and then up and around. Boy, this is, okay, it's too much. Distance way down, man. There we go. There we go, and then around. Alrighty. And again, this is more of that kind of tedious stuff. I don't know why I'm so afraid to, I know I'm not going to paint on any area that's not red, so calm down, Mike. Here, and then around, whatever. Anything else on the front? Yep, same deal. We'll just go around this way. Come on, lazy mouse, just, there we go. Up, and then here. And then around. Nice. Oh. And then across, I think we're going to have to set this back to 1 for some of these. No big deal. And then here. And then here. Okay. Let's go back to 3D only. All right. And then let's pick up where we left off. Oh, let's set this back to tangent wrap. There we go. Okay, so I think I've got all my double stitches. Yes, yes, yes. And then across some of these is single, and you know that's just a simple matter of going down into your brush settings here for line and saying count to 1. So now we're back down to single, and now we can literally just drag across here for any single stitches we might need to do. Okay, oh, we missed one. Let's go back to double, and we'll just okay, and then back to single here, across and down. Blow. Okay. Oh man, one more. And then on the white, it's going to be simple stitches, red leather all. I'm going to duplicate this one. We're going to say white stitches. The color selection we need to obviously switch out. So we're going to pick only where the white leather is. And then on the actual stitches here, we're going to sample just this kind of whitish color. We're going to say, just add a black mask just to kill that. And then we'll add a paint. And before we get into this, let's go back to our red leather simple stitches here. We're going to duplicate this. Wink, we'll call it sync. I'm going to drop this below the red leather, And then for this one, let's go down here. This one, we just want to affect the height. So right now, if I turn this on and off, you're seeing just adding to the height. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say base color off, metal roughness, all this stuff off. We just want to play with the height. And here's what we're doing. So here's that mask that we have. So we're going to go in here to this paint. We're going to say add a filter. And we're going to say add a blur. And then we're going to say for this level itself, we want to change that height from out to in. So now around our stitches above, it looks like it's kind of embedded in there. If you need to, you can go back to your leather stitches here and you can pop that height out a little bit more. So now you've got a little bit of embedding going on where those stitches are. So that's all that is. So we got our red leather, we got our white stitches here. We're going to paint where those go, obviously. And now these ones, okay, these are interesting. These will actually add a bit. I'm excited. So we have our simple stitch here. We've got our line properties, count of 2. I'm just going to go through here because some of these are kind of dirty. Oops. I shouldn't have changed that. I want to keep these all consistent. Okay, close enough. A little bigger. Okay, so on this white stitching here, you know what? Let's go back into our 2D only. Again, we don't have great UVs, but they'll work for our purposes here. So we can just go through here. I'm going to crank that lazy radius up just a little bit while I'm doing this. And again, it's only going to allow us to paint on the white. So whoosh, go through here and then whoosh, go across here. Okay, and then all of that is single. And then up around the, let's go back into 3D. Up around here is all single. So I'm going to go back in here to line count of 1. And let's switch views. Zoom in, zoom in. Okay, cool. So in through here, there's some single stitching. I'm going to grab that. Oop, damn it. Distance. Okay. Here, here, here. Drop some stitches in there. And then single line stitches. So this gets interesting because it goes over the black, actually. Might have to do some fancy footwork there, or I might just ignore it because I don't really care that much, but the white stitches technically go over there. So what we could do is we could say for simple stitches, we'll add, white stitches. On color selection, we could say, you know what, let's also add black in here. So while I'm painting on my simple stitches, it will allow me to paint over onto the black in that case. In that one case. So we've got white stitches on the side and on the inside here. Let me see, do I got a good inside view? Up. No, I don't. You know what? I do have them sitting here. So here's the eBay. So here's the inside. Let's say open image and new tab. So right through here we have the double, then we have a single, and then another single. So that's what I'm matching here. So we have a double done. Let's move our light around so we can see. Then we got a nice little single that goes from here on over. Kind of fits that crease that we have in there. Let's crank that distance up. So we can just do one swoop right through here, and then one swoop down through here. Okay, and I think that's all the white. And then also up here, actually. So we'll turn that distance down. And then right along here, it just gets a little bit of... Now this geometry is obviously not great. So let's draw the eye away from that. Oh, and also back here, we need to get rid of those dots too. So, okay, we got dots all paint. We'll go back to just a regular old basic hard brush, painting black, and we'll just get rid of this height for the dots. Okay. Oh, also along the tongue there. Front view, front view. Nope, no stitches there. Although now that I'm looking in here, these are actually these aren't really leather. It's kind of a tight cloth, shiny cloth weave. I don't care. Okay. I think we've got these Oh, we got it. So for our white stitches, we're going to say duplicate this off. We'll drop this down below real quick. What do we call the other one? Sync. We'll stay consistent. Simple stitches. We're going to turn everything off but height. On top of this paint we're going to add a filter that is a blur. And then we're going to take this height and we're going to embed it down. And then on this original white stitches, let's get sync out of that. Hello, let's turn this down. There we go. So white stitches here, simple stitches, and we can go here and change the height as needed. That's fine. Okay, and then you could go in and dirty some of these up, but that's totally fine. So we've got our shoe here, so let's hop into, we'll go back into IRay. Here's our beautiful 1985 vintage Jordans, a couple $1,000 on eBay. We didn't do a ton of the text because that's just kind of tedious work, and we didn't stamp our alpha down here again because that's just tedious work. So feel free to do that. You know how to do it. It's not hard. It just takes you a minute. And then we're going to go into, let's go in here. So environment map, let's turn it back so we can see it. So we'll go back into turn off clear color, and then we'll get out of this map and we'll just throw in, you know, a little beach scene for our shoe. Look at that little vacation shot, taking our Jordans on vacation here. Let's take that color, this Y value down just a tiny bit. -1.5. 5149. There we go. So now it's on the ground there. Of course, if you didn't want to just render this in IRay, you could certainly send this to another program. And how you would do that, you go up here to File, Export Textures, and an easier way, if you want to like throw this into Redshift, for example, you can say, just give me a Redshift output, or Marmoset, or whatever you want to render this in. Export these textures, and then go into your external program, apply your textures with the material, and you're in good shape. But anyway, there's your vintage gross worn Jordans. How you ID stitch in ZBrush. Yeah, we did that essentially. Let's see, we go back here, go to my YouTube channel. I'll link it real quick. So for these stitches, it's essentially the exact same process as what we did in here. So somewhere in here, when we applied the stitches, don't know exactly where that is. Can we have, oh, we can show more. Custom stitch brush, frame polygroup. Oop, there goes my camera. Custom stitch brush, and then framing our, close that, my camera should pop back. So in this section right here, share, start at, will be how to, you know, make your own custom stitch brush and then apply it to your mesh. And then what we did today was just fill that with a color. So when we were in ZBrush, we just had, you know, here's our framed stitches, and then this is the color ID for our stitches right there, if I could select them. So just basically these stitches here, if I just turn those off, you just bake that out, and then that's your color ID. So we do have color ID for those stitches. If I want to do stitches in here and then assign a color ID, it's the exact same process. So I'll paste that to you. There you go. Sorry, I kind of just grabbed a question out of the middle there. Thank you for, yeah, I do need to, I get worked up. Little things work me up. That stitches my dunk model was going to do in ZBrush after seeing this much more flexible. Yeah, agreed. This is much faster and easier, I think. Or like you did, Marvin, paint them individually. That's total control. And maybe a little relaxing. That might be a little meditative. Yep, you called it, Jets. We found those tongue dots. Cool. Yes, Substance Painter. Yes. Okay. I think I'm back where I started. And again, if I missed something, I apologize. Cool. Yeah, we got pretty far. Make changes. Air Force One. Yeah, so that would be if you were gonna stamp. Like, there is something I do need to stamp, right? It would essentially be like, and even this could be a really fun project too, where you go through and you create a mask and then you put a weave on that so it looks like, you know, a machine went in there and added these threads in those directions. There's actually really cool, what do they call those patches, like those Boy Scout patches you have, where it's like made of thread based on color ID. Really smarter people than me have made that stuff. Be careful when painting in 2D view, as it won't reproject properly. You change your UVs later. Absolutely, that's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, the model, no, yeah, we made that from scratch. We just started with this blobby mesh. I'll show you what we really started with, which is kind of gross, but we'll turn this on and unmask. So this is what we started with, and then we turned it into our what we got here. Just a nice little shoe. Again, if we want to put this in a different environment, we can go back in here and we'll say, there's also, this doesn't have like any cool emissive or anything. You would want to do like activate post effects and any sort of color correction or glare you would want to add. You can do it in here. I don't think we really need to do that though. Yeah, we can find, maybe look at, you know, Bus Garage is kind of a cool looking one. Maybe find like a stadium one that might be interesting, like an interior. Now you can bring in your own environments too, but I'll just stick with, ooh, wait, 80 Studio for an 85 vintage shoe. Yeah, now we're talking. It's a little dark. So the exposure, we can say, you bump that up a bit. But yeah, have fun with it. Cool. Sound effects help so much. I think that Stitch Brush is standard in Painter. You should be able to find that. Alt left mouse button on a channel disables other channels in Stitch Painter. Good tip, thank you. Stitch over Duck is not really that good. Well, you know, spend a little more time on it. One thing you might actually, what I kind of messed up on. Oh, you know what we forgot to do. One thing I messed up on is this Nike logo is actually kind of out there a little bit more than it should be. Really quickly, let's switch this back to what is it? Because I did forget one thing. Panorama. So we're going to take white stitches, duplicate this off. We'll call it black stitches. And then in this folder here, we're going to set this to a sample of this color. And then on top of here, we're going to do a paint and just get rid of this, add a black mask, and then add a paint. If I can find it, there it is. And then for here, we'll go back to Stitch. Now this probably reset all my damn settings, didn't it? That's okay, it's easy enough to fix. So down here under line, we want to do 1 count, spacing, wait, scale Y all the way up, scale X. Let's do, it is just a single count on this one, yes. Stripes opacity down to 0. And then back up here under this spacing, we want them to be pretty close. Okay, so on here, and again, oops, did I not sample? Maybe a little darker. Okay, fine, get rid of this, go away. Back on paint. All right, so the black stitches we forgot to add. Let's add that distance up just a bit. Speaking of, and actually let's put this kind of close, because again, when I was in ZBrush and I kind of inflated this, I kind of made room. Oh man, I kind of made room. What am I looking for? A little bigger. That shouldn't be nearly that high. Did that change on me? Sorry. And even if these are too dark or not the right property, we can always go and fix that. And actually, this color selection here should only be the black areas. There we go. But yeah, spend time. If this was a real production model and not just me messing around in the mornings with y'all, if you see any problem areas, and that's the cool thing too about kind of the method we use, which is just super quick and dirty. Again, be careful when you're painting in 2D, like was mentioned earlier. But feel free to go ahead and like decimate your model and start working so you can come up with those problem areas, because you're not going to necessarily know all of them. Like, oh, while you're working in ZBrush, I'm going to know everything that's going to happen in Painter. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. So do a quick decimated version, throw it into Painter and just mess around with it for an hour just to see like, hey, can I do everything I need to do? And then like was brought up earlier, it's like, those stitches across here, they're not selling me. You know, they really don't look that good. Go back, at least you go back into ZBrush and fix it and then reapply your changes. Or if this is just like a proxy and you're like, hey, I just want to get an idea of how this is all going to work before I go to final. If you run into problem areas, you can fix them, which is very, very useful. While it's quick and cheap, it's just helpful. And now I'm painting across seams, which is kind of dangerous. Live on the edge, right? Let's go to 3D only. See if you notice anything. Okay, and then one more time. Let's go ahead and close this down, duplicate this off, drop it below, sink it down, get rid of all these channels except for height, and then we'll add a blur. We'll drop this down below. We got the paint, add a filter, add a blur, and you can change the blur intensity and stuff too. Black stitches, sync here. There we go. So now we've got our stitches. And in fact, I guess it does kind of sink in there. It is contrasty, which is kind of how it looks. And then as far as the stitches themselves go, we'll go back to black stitches, turn that on, go back to our properties here, and we'll just change this base color and that roughness. It's fine. Okay, we added our black stitches. Whew. Let's go back into our exposure for environment. We'll turn that back down to 1. All right, y'all. Is there a way to change crease roundness for different edges under a single subtool? No, it's all in ZBrush. Unfortunately, it's all or nothing, which is a better answer for you on there. But as of this recording, it's either the crease level is set for the entire subtool, unfortunately. Favorite composite mat is pretty good for tongue. It's the default one. Oh, check that out. Let me see. So back in your materials here, under your fabrics. Yeah, I might go back in and fix that, but I really have to pee bad. What's just to do in the texture versus the model? Basically, long story short, is if it doesn't affect the, and this one I put in just because just to kind of demo it, but even these, I don't know, sometimes if the stitches are going to either deform the surface or have a really intense interaction with models around it, I might do it in the model. If it's just something that's like just on the surface as a detail and it's not affecting the silhouette and it's not interacting with any other geometry really, doing it in the texture is much more flexible. And then even in fact, now I mentioned that, like I mentioned before, just like sculpting, let's just do like way up here at the top, we'll just add a fill layer with just height on it, and we'll call this sculpt. In fact, let's do this. You could sculpt with height and then go in here and dial it in later. So for example, if we just add a black mask, and I'm not gonna, you can add a paint if you want to, but essentially what I'm talking about is you can go in here to your, and there's brushes for this too, but let's do basic soft. So we're going through here and then see how we're kind of painting in height detail. You can stamp height detail with like patterns and checkers or arrows or whatever you want. But if you just want to kind of sculpt in some wrinkles, you can totally do that in here. And then you can go back here and adjust if you wanted to go in or out. Also, I think what you could do is just add a basic, this is just a fill layer you can go through and do like color variation, which we should totally do, actually, now that I think about that. Set this to, I don't know, color dodge maybe. And then we can go through here. We have basic soft. I'm going to turn on flow down quite a bit with pressure sensitivity. We're going to go down to color. We're going to turn everything off but color. Here, and we can just choose. We'll start with a sample of red, and then we can just modify this. So this kind of value range is what I'm looking for. So we can just go through here and we can just add just a little bit of variation to our color. So just go through here and be like, a little bit of orange through here, and then add a little bit of maybe greens, you know, whatever your reference has, but also just a way to kind of make it not so samey and gross. You know, not, again, I'm not doing this in any, and again, it's not just on the reds, it's also on the blues and the blacks and stuff, just to give yourself a little bit of visual interest. And I'm not doing it in any meaningful way or any storytelling way, so don't do what I'm doing. Just get the basic idea and then do it right. But just a way to kind of break that up. And on that too, if we do just a brush here, and in our brush we're not going to have any base color, we're just going to paint with height. I think we should just be able to just grab different height values. So if you want to go through here and sculpt in, let's see, layer 1, height, we can change the overall height, and we're only painting with height. Here, is it going to work? What am I missing here? Height is on, and I should be set to linear dodge, and I should be painting with a height value. Let's turn flow off maybe. X is not working. Let me choose a different. Maybe I can't paint. Let me see. Let's drop down to our height channel. So I am painting. Is it too subtle? Oh, it is. Okay. So it's working. It's just real subtle. So you can go through here, and like I said, if you wanted to go through and kind of paint in some wrinkles, let's take this up here. So we're kind of sculpting out, and then you can go back in here and kind of sculpt in a little bit. And then actually I wonder, so this is just default value here, and that'll override it. So basically what we're doing is we're sculpting, aka painting, on the height channel here, and then you can get different like kind of sculpting effects. But again, this one's pretty subtle. But you can see kind of what you can get. And then I wonder, you can just apply a blur to this. I wonder if you can shift smooth that. There might be ways to do that, but anyway, that's another option for you. AccuCurve option located in ZBrush, that's under move. So if we want to AccuMove, we can hit go into Move Brush, for example. You can do this for any brush, but underneath your brush settings, curve, AccuCurve turned on. Rigging, you're planning to do rig the ultramarine and maybe SpongeBob. Yeah, I need to get my thoughts in order, but I'm going to rig everything. It's kind of fun to do. And also, you can also use that to pose your objects. When you go into Transpose Master, you can export your Transpose Master out, throw it on a temp rig, move it around, paint weights, and then throw it back into ZBrush. Might be kind of cool. Any screen flickering when using IRay? I haven't. I don't use it that much, but I haven't noticed that. Cool. This is, what are we in? Adobe Help About. I think this is the latest. I try to keep things updated. About. I don't know. Whatever version this is. I hope it's the latest. IS Quick Rig. Yeah, that's a good one. A little bit of both. Quick Rig, the Human IK stuff for a quick start is excellent. Cool. Oh, and then yeah, flow. I think that's why it was so subtle, as I had my flow way down. But anyway, thanks everybody. Oops, KS everybody. This is all on YouTube, so if you missed anything or you want to go back to it again, it's just Way back here on the YouTube channel, here it is. You know, let's go to playlists. You know what? Home might be better. There's stuff on there, so I'll link you to this, and I'll link you to the stuff that's kind of more curated or at least organized. That is on my ArtStation page, and it's got some extra goodies in there. So for like the Spongy Bob, it's got some videos, and then it's got like, here's the video or multiple videos if you click up here, like Cinema 4D soft body overview, all in this part, and then some renders and other extra stuff in there. So ArtStation is another good resource if you want to kind of dig through there. Cool. Thank you. And